Welcome everybody to the budget meeting today, and do this, what, once a year?
Once a year.
Yeah. But anyway, I'm gonna pretty much will turn the meeting over to the town manager. Appreciate everybody being here, appreciate all the department heads being here, and let's get started.
Okay, yes, sir. Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for meeting today. Thank you, staff, for, as in the terms of the Mayor Pro Tem volunteering to come in on a Saturday. We certainly appreciate that. This will be the first of 2 budget meetings, and for 3 of you, this will be the first time you've gone through this. And I just want to make a couple opening remarks, is that the budget is one of the most important documents you will approve each year. There's statutory requirements that set some framework behind that. But what this budget does is basically it defines what the town's priorities are and how y'all are paying for it, or a financial plan of how to pay for it. The other thing you'll find in the budget is that you will be approving projects that will go for several years. And so while many of the operations will be 1 year, there are several of them that will be multi-year projects, so it's very important. If you look at the agenda, it talks about adjourning at 1:10. If we finish up before then, we're going to get out of here before then. And the other thing I want to mention to you is that this meeting is designed to be very informal. We want to get the board's input as to what you want to see over the next fiscal year, which of course starts July 1st. Jim will lead off by giving us a financial update of our revenue and expenditures. If at any time during any presentation you have any questions, don't hesitate to ask. We want to hear from you. From that, then we'll kind of talk through those other bulletized items when we get to the CIP. You've got a big spreadsheet right there. I'll kind of walk through those projects. It will be important as we walk through those projects, if there are some that you would like to see us add to the list of funding or move up the list, that's fine too. We can add that, but we could also, when we meet again on April 2nd, kind of make a final determination of what you would like to see added. We'll spend a lot of time on, or some time on state funding. You've defined your priorities in the American Rescue. We've got all that locked and loaded and ready to go. And then we'll have roughly 5-minute presentations from the department heads on some of the things they're looking at. Jim and I and the department heads are still scrunching the numbers, and we should have the numbers for you in a couple weeks. Does anybody have any questions? Okay, why don't we, Jim, if you'll go ahead and get started.
Testing. Good morning. I first want to welcome everyone, especially the new members, Tom, Crystal, Dennis, our new mayor, David, Todd, and Marcus. Welcome to our budget retreat. I asked Mike for next year, maybe we could do it in Port St. Lucie. Budget retreat. So for my mission today is basically to give you an update on the financial status of the town and some budgeting procedures. So let me first begin by saying our ratings. We received a AAA rating from Standard & Poor's. 31 towns in the state of North Carolina have it, so we're very impressed with that. Moody's, we remained at AA1, which is their second out of 27 rankings. So we're very proud of those rankings. Now what that does, when we have to go to the bonding market, when you have those kind of ratings, you get the best interest rates. So for example, in September, we went for a $6 million bond, $4 million for Old Monroe Road, which we've now paid $2 million of the $5 million commitment, and $2 million for streets and roads, which Todd is going to take care of. We got that for 1.506%. So that's what our taxpayers are going to be with the next 20 years. So that's the lowest rates. I've been in this business a long time, unheard of rates. But that goes to our Moody's and Standard & Poor's rating. Revenues. Let's start with that. So basically, when we budget our revenues, we get information from the North Carolina League of Municipalities. They have a trending. We use historical trending as well to plug in our numbers. And then we get from Union County, we get the property valuations. Now, that's our biggest tax source, property taxes. So the first week of April, Union County will tell us what the valuation of our properties are. So we're still putting those numbers together. Currently, our tax rate is 18.5 cents per $100 of assessed value. Let me break that down for you. So someone owns a home for $250,000, their tax is about $460 a year. That includes everything, all services, sheriff, except for fire. Fire add another, say $100, $125. We're serviced by 3 fire districts in the town. So the total nut for someone living in Indian Trail is about $587 a year. And we're proud of that. In addition, there's a stormwater fee is attached. $53 per year for most people. Anybody with a larger home pays $63. It's a very strong fund between our chairman and between Todd. Our last audit, we had about $4.4 million in the fund balance there, but I know we're working on a lot of projects, Todd.
Correct.
So we're real happy about that. Let me go into the property taxes. So this year's collections are great. Tax collector Massey tells me we've collected over 99% of our taxes already. This is in a year of a reval, 99%. And so basically what that tells me, folks in Indian Trail, they pay their taxes. Now we budget 96%. So right now we're sitting with a surplus, as I'm standing here today, $267,000 more than what we had budgeted for. Goes right into the fund balance. Now in New York, you needed that 4% cushion. We don't need it here, but we have it. Last year, we had our first revaluation in 6 years. Property taxes went up about 45%. Property values went up about 45%, which is okay, but thank you, we maintained our tax rate at 18.5 cents. And what that did, for sales tax purposes, the way the county allocates sales tax, they're on an ad valorem basis. That means the higher your tax levy, the more sales tax you get. To me, it's a little bit backwards. That's the way it works. 51 counties in the state do it that way. 49 counties do it by a population basis, which we'd be better served at. So by keeping our tax rate at 18.5 cents, this year's budget, we're estimated to get an additional $500,000 from Union County for sales tax. And we'll make sure we build that in. Sales tax is our second largest source. Year to date, we received $2 million through 7 months. We're about 73% of our annual budget. Sales taxes are great in Union County. We're going to bust through our $2.7 million with about 2 or 3 months to go. Planning revenues through February were $261,000 on a budget of $200,000. So Brandy's doing something down there. I'm not sure what it is, but planning revenues are ABC revenues. Through 2 of our 4 installments, we're at 90%, and there's a lot of big good things happening. I tried to buy some stock. I know there's a new store going up, but they said it's not stockable. So, but David, thank you for that and your leadership there. Parks and Rec revenues picking up nicely this time of year. Hayden had some problems with the pandemic, but he feels he's going to make it through. Budget, thank you, Hayden. Now turning to debt. Mike wanted me to go over this a little bit. At present, we have 6 outstanding debt issues totaling $17 million. This represents less than 4% of our allowable constitutional debt limit. That means for a town our size, with our property valuation, we could have over $400 million in debt. We have $17 million. I talked a little bit about, so let me go through the remaining 5. The first one I told you about, we took down $6 million in September, $4 million for Old Monroe Road. We made our first installment, second installment, $3 million to go. We'll pay that every July 1st. And then at the end of that, when the project comes due, we're going to get $2.5 million for another project, Todd. So the net effect will be 2.5 million. We made that decision to go with our $5 million commitment. Real quickly, December of 2010, we borrowed 1.7 million to purchase Chestnut and his town hall property. That was a good decision. What would that property cost today, David? So we own that, and believe it or not, we have 400,000 left on that bond. We're pretty much paid off. December of 12, we borrowed 3 million for streets and sidewalks. We still have 1.25 million in the bank. Todd's got that allocated for projects already. April of 13, we borrowed 8 million, mainly for our parks. Get those up to speed. September of 15, we borrowed 4750 for this building. We're paying that off. In October of 19.
Jim.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
These, just a quick question. Mr. Mayor, you mind if I just ask a quick question?
Oh, please do, yeah.
The numbers that you are reading off, do you have that on a spreadsheet somewhere or on something that we can just
Yes,
really
sir.
look at?
Yes, sir, we will send that out to you.
Thank you. Go ahead, Jim, sorry.
Sure. And the last one is October of 2019. We borrowed 2.5 million for parks, for Chestnut and for Crooked Creek. We spent about 700,000 on the turf field. 1.8 million's in the bank for projects there. Money's ready to go. Our debt responsibility in this year's budget is 1.9 million, but again, this will come out of our debt service capital reserve account. Now, this was established in 2012, and that's a nickel of our 18.5 cents goes in there directly, which was a great idea. I wasn't here in 12, but whoever came up with it was a fantastic idea. So that money goes in there. This year, we're projected about 3 million will go in there. The first 1.9 will pay our debt, no impact on the tax rate, and the additional money goes to capital projects for Todd and Mike to decide what we're going to do. Next up, briefly, our appropriations. Every quarter, we formally meet, Mike, and we met with the departments to go over their budgets. The actual, through the first half of the year, everyone was on budget or better than budget. Budget 22-23. Mike has already met with all the departments. We're still early in the process. But again, based on what I see, I don't have any problem recommending that we'll keep that 18.5 cents. We are also reviewing the next budget cycle, 23-24. Mike had me look into a digital budget book, so we're going to try to make it a little bit more transparent for the public. New York State grants, Abby. That's up on the screen. Just wanted to go over this briefly. We have received $10.3 million. It's in the bank. Again, I've been in this business a long time. The states never used to give that kind of money. We got it. It's in the bank. I'm going to identify the 5. Again, that was a team effort between council members, Adam, Todd, Mike, and my senior accountant, Alicia G. Real quick, $50,000 for signage around town. A new park at Holly Park, $250,000. Underground utilities on our Indian Trail Complete Street, $5 million. Shady Bluff, create a wider, safer roadway, $980,000. Indian Trail Road extension improvements, going from 74 to Old Monroe Road, $2 million. And lastly, a commitment to resurface additional town roads, $2,020,000.
Hey, Jim, are those dates in stone now? I mean, that's what we're going to start these projects on the start dates?
Yeah, I know Mike's going to talk about that, but yeah, they're in stone pretty much. And again, we have a good relationship with Raleigh. We've been talking with them as far as dates, and if something changes, obviously we have to send in a strategy change.
Thank you.
And then ARPA, I know it's going to come later. Mike and Adam are going to talk about that, but again, I'm blessed to be here. The finances of the town are in great shape. Great leadership from Mike on down. Council made some good decisions. Mike, you want to add anything?
We've thrown a lot of numbers at you, and of course, that can get blurred really quickly. Just 3 or 4 takeaways, and Marcus will have that spreadsheet to y'all early next week, is that, as you heard, there's a strong bottom line that we've got because of just prudent management, both from the policy level of the board and the hard work of the staff. We also, of the 18.5 cent tax rate, 5 cent goes to what we call the capital fund, which helps pay for any debt that we've got and projects. You also heard that there's a relationship between the tax rate and sales tax that we get. One of the reasons we kept it at 18.5 cent last year, or the current, what is now the current year, is because had we reduced that, it would have also impacted the sales tax. We would have gotten less sales tax. That's your second leading source. As he mentioned, our debt that we have, a bonded debt, is very, very low compared to what our debt limit is. State law limits it to 8% of the total assessed tax value. So you're in good shape there. The bottom line to all of that is that what I have heard from this board is that y'all would like to get some projects rolling, and we're in the position to where we can do that. And a lot of them could be pay-go or flow as the project is. And so it's all good news. We are also upgrading technology so that we have like a 3-year turnaround on some of our laptops. We're also looking at some of our software. Jim talked about some of the budgeting software, which would allow us to move from more of a paper-based system to more of a standard of today, along with, accountability and projections. So I think that's pretty much it, isn't it,
Yeah.
Jim, unless I missed something?
And the 18.5 cents is, for our town our size, is one of the lowest in the state. You guys should be proud of that.
Jim, I heard you say something about 49 counties and 51 counties. You said that we'd be better suited doing it a different way. I didn't really grasp everything you were
Yeah.
talking about there.
That's a good question, Tom. Basically, sales tax distribution. There's
Right.
two methods in the state of North Carolina. One is pro forma, based on population, which would serve us best. We're the biggest town in Union County. We get half of what Monroe gets, less population.
Are you suggesting that we need to move, are we on the other spectrum, I guess? Or are you suggesting that we'd be better served if we move to that?
Well,
For benefit
we'd
for our
definitely be
town?
better served, but that's a Union County commissioner issue.
I'm just asking, I mean.
Yeah, it's great.
The commissioner decides whether we do that or not?
Yes, sir.
So we just need to solicit this commissioner
Well-
to change to a better program for us?
If I could add, I think that the counties have to make that decision by April 1st. And if you look at it, and Jim, tell me if I'm wrong, when you look at the ad valorem method, think about a pie, if you will, and think about within those slices of pie is a tax rate. Okay, obviously, if a town has a tax rate of 30 cent, they've got a bigger slice of the pie versus one that has 18.5 cent. So that's the ad valorem method. The other method, as Jim talked about, is population. With us being the largest town or city in Union County, if they went that way, we would get more sales tax revenue. And I can't speak for the county, but I'm sure as they're looking at those two formulas, they're saying, how does it affect their bottom line also?
Yeah, but would that affect the citizen of Indian Trail in a negative way? Because I heard something, maybe I'm ignorant to the terminology, but you said 30% of the tax
Well,
rate, or?
I use the pie
Oh,
as
you just
simply
use-
an
okay, I
example
get it, I get
of,
it.
with us having an 18.5 cent tax rate, we would typically have a little bit smaller piece of the pie. And so what happened when some of these other cities reduced their tax rate, their slice
Gets
decreased,
smaller.
we kept ours the same. And so had we reduced our tax rate for this fiscal year, our sales tax would have taken a bit of a dip. Now, I say that, but I also say that the economy, at least in this area of the state, not necessarily all parts of the state, is going pretty well. You know, you see it on 74, you see it in the stores.
Sure.
And so some of that is just natural growth.
Okay. Well, I was questioning what's best for the citizen. I mean, if we can make, our bottom line better,
Yeah.
Jim, you know, I just,
I have brought up the topic with county commissioners, some of them. At best, I've gotten politely smiled at.
it's a sore subject, it's a sore subject for them.
And that's a good point, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem. I think you suggested it last year, and they
I'll bring it up to them again. I
Yeah, we
don't mind.
should. Let's
So,
be persistent,
It'd
yeah.
be better for Indian Trail. but-
Absolutely.
Can I ask a couple questions here? if you
Yes,
don't
sir.
mind? Mr. Mayor, can I ask a question, sir? Mr. Mayor Pro Tem?
And I got questions. That'll-
Go ahead, sir. Sorry, sir.
Let me do this. Why don't you just raise your hand?
I did, but you didn't look my way, sir. Miss,
I'll finish the
I'll-
question, then
I'll-
we'll come down there.
I'll show some deference to the Mayor Pro Tem. Go ahead.
So, how much longer do we have since the town hall is one of our biggest debt service payments a year? You know how many more years we got to pay on that?
Yeah, let's see.
Stole my question, by the way.
September 15th it started, Todd. We owe $2,848,000 on that still. And I don't have the date. I'll get that for you when it completes.
So we pay about 400,000 a year, right?
Yeah.
Okay, all right, so, yeah, that's 2, 4, yeah, we got about 7 years. So, okay, and, thank you, Mr. Wallowich, you're doing a great job.
Okay, just real quick before Marcus, how much is the interest rate on that? I'm just curious.
I don't have that in front of me. I'll get it for you.
I didn't know,
Yeah.
if it's real small, it wouldn't be worth trying to.
I'll get that for you.
The 8 million was not a bond, it was a loan.
Excuse me?
The $8 million for town hall was a loan, not a bond.
Right.
So it's in our best interest to really prepay it if we can, right?
Repeat.
It's in our best interest to
Pay it
prepay,
off.
to pay it off early if we can, right?
If we could pay it, all of them, Marcus,
Right.
yeah,
So
the
I
less
think-
debt, the better, I'm
All
sure.
right, so I think Mr. Barber asked and Mr. Cohn asked an interesting question, which is what are the rates for that particular project? And what is the remaining term, and also the principal left on it? The other question I have for you, Mr. Wallowitz, and you may not have that answer, but if you can provide it. What percentage of our budget, the town revenue, is derived from property taxes? And what percentage is derived from sales taxes? And what percentage is derived from the other revenue sources? Parks and Recs, planning and so forth. You may not necessarily have these numbers before you.
I will get
But the
that.
thing is, it helps, right?
Yeah.
To understand sort of from a revenue standpoint. We have to have a balanced budget, meaning that we have to make sure that what our expenses equals what our revenue is, even if we're taking money from the general fund or the fund balance to move over. But if we can have those numbers, that would really help crystallize sort of
It's a good
what our
question.
revenue position is.
I will get that for you.
Question, since I'm new and a couple of others are new, but what's the town allowed to do with the money that we have in the bank? Can you strictly just go to another bank or to a bank and invest money in CDs or whatever, or are you allowed to go out and invest it in mutual funds? If we can get a 10% return on the town, the question is, can we get a 10% return on money that we would invest? So we'd be better off just paying the low interest rate that we got on the buildings. I'm just curious what the town's allowed to do.
Yeah, we have a policy, Dennis, that we have to stick by. At the beginning of the year, we got certain banks we can use. Most of our money's in the NCCMT, and the very low interest rate, but very safe. We do have money with First Citizens. We have money with South State. So I try to get interest wherever I can. Of course, everything's low, and we are restricted to the state allows only certain banks that we can use. They have to be, make sure they have the collateralization and all that, but I'm always looking to move wherever I can.
A bank that's insured by the FDIC,
Right.
so you can't go out and put it into speculative type.
No, I can't speculate, no. Something's supposed to be happening March 16th with the interest rate, so we'll be watching that. It must be going up.
I have a question. I have just one question for the benefit of the new members up here.
Yeah.
The money that we have in the bank from bonds that we've issued, we cannot go and earn more interest than we pay on it, correct?
Correct.
So just want to make sure that we bring that just for the benefit of
Yeah.
the new members.
And we, The way interest rates are now, we haven't had to worry about that, Marcus, but you're right.
Yeah,
That's called arbitrage. We can't
Yes.
make money on money in the bank.
thank you.
That clear, everybody else?
Absolutely, I'm
I
done.
have a couple comments.
Sure.
First of all, that's really, Dennis's question is really what one of your jobs is to make sure what we do with our money, and the town manager, make sure we're putting it in the right places to make some money. So, and part of that, and I don't mean this in a bad way, but it's, you're not really allowed to gamble, and that'd be kind of gambling with tax money if you put it in the stock market or put it somewhere like that, so I understand that. Just a quick way, we're AAA, and I should know this, but is there a 4A too? Or
No,
is there not?
AAA's the
So we
highest.
moved up to AAA.
We got
not
moved
too
up.
long ago.
Yeah, that
I
was,
knew we were one away from, so AAA's high as you can get,
Triple A's as high as you can get.
which speaks for your department.
Yeah,
and-
absolutely,
And
yeah.
yourself and how well.
A team effort, yeah, it comes from Mike on down.
Absolutely.
You mentioned the turf field, $750,000 when you were going through that, and I just want to throw out for the new members that here was good planning by our great staff, is that we got, what, $500,000 from the Panthers?
250.
250,000, so
Yeah.
which really helped the city. I mean,
That was great.
Probably the reason we did it was because we got a $250,000 to do that. Touching on the 2012 5 cents tax, I happened to be on that council.
That was great.
Got a lot of criticism for
Did ya?
raising taxes, and it was, and it's the last time that we've raised taxes in Indian Trail. And, for people who don't know it, it was raised for the park bonds. And it was done kind of a wacky, little wacky way. Wasn't real fond of the way we did it, but, we actually did it before the park bonds were passed. But we said if they didn't pass, the 5 cents would go towards roads and infrastructure, so. Probably spoke loud enough for you to hear, but let's see. Okay. Can you hear me now?
Will everyone check their mics? Take a moment and check your mics, please.
Testing.
I'm gonna do a Verizon.
Green light's on.
Can you hear me now? Okay. All right. So anyway,
But when you said that 5% tax increase 10
5
years.
cents.
5 cents, excuse me, 10 years ago, was to go towards road improvements.
it was gonna go towards roads improvements if the park bonds didn't pass, but the park bonds did pass.
So that 5 cents is, what
I'll tell-
road improvements are we seeing?
Yeah, what I do, and we didn't end up kind of sticking to that either, but it does, and after the park bonds get paid off, the 5 cents always stays on there.
The reason I ask
doesn't
that
fall off.
is, our citizens are crying about our roads. And, that's why I asked you, Jim, are these dates in stone? Because as a resident and, person that drives these roads all the time, we want action. And, that's why I said, we need to start. Indian Trail Road's a disaster. So that's why I was, talking about that 5 cents. We need to make sure that we see action for the town because people are fed up, So anyways, I'll shut up now.
All right, I'll finish. So anyway, and the last thing is, Monroe, I know they get more of the sales tax money, as you were talking about. Do you know, so do you know the percentage that they get of the pie? Do you know that, or does that?
Basically, they get twice as much as we do, David, so.
Okay, and is it because, and did you say that their tax rate was 30, is it 30 cents?
Monroe's 53 cents.
Well, so if you base it on that, they get more than double
Yeah.
than what we get.
It's
A lot
more
more
than
than
twice,
double than what we get, so,
It's based on the tax levy. So say El Monroe has a $15 million tax levy. We have a $9 million, whatever. So it's based on the levy itself. But they get twice as much as we do. Waxhaw, for example, population 16,000, no commercial. They get more sales tax than we do
Because they pay a higher tax.
because they have a 38 cents tax rate. So
we-
their levy is higher than ours.
Tom, let's
sorry.
go, let me finish, and then if you want, I'll ask you a few
Go
more
ahead.
questions. So, okay, so I just wanted to understand that better and just make a comment that because we run our town better, because it's run better,
we get less.
That's,
So
right, that's the
if-
part that
if-
never
if
made any
we-
sense
if
to
we
me.
did a poor job of running our town and needed the more money and had to raise our tax rate, then we would get more money, which really makes no sense. So I just,
That's well said, David, and I believe that 100%. You know, it's counterproductive. They're encouraging people to have a higher tax rate, tax levy.
Exactly.
Get
Spend
more sales
money
tax.
and- Right, right. And we're very fortunate here in Indian Trail. And the last thing I want to say is I want to thank you for the job you do. You do a
Thank you.
fabulous job. Your staff does a fabulous job. And I think it's obvious as we sit here and watch you get up here and speak and tell us that we're very fortunate that
Thank you.
you're with Indian Trail. So if, Tom, you got another?
No, you actually answered it in that last statement.
All right, well,
He took it from me.
thank you.
He
Thank
knew I
you.
was gonna
Thank
say
you.
that.
Mr. Mayor, let me wrap up with a couple comments on this
Okay.
section, if that's good. North Carolina is not a home rule state, and what does that mean is that we can only do those things that the state of North Carolina will allow us to do. And in the 1930s, North Carolina passed the Budget and Fiscal Control Act. You'll hear me talk about that. You'll hear me talk about the Local Government Commission. And what that means in day-to-day terms is they keep a tight stronghold on how we budget money, how we manage money, how we borrow money, and how we invest idle funds. So to get at your question, Councilmember Gay, what we do is we have a policy on where we put idle funds, and periodically we will go back and solicit bids from banks on some of those idle funds to try to get the highest return that we can. The other thing I will mention, I want to make sure that we have captured everything that y'all asked for, is that we want to deliver a spreadsheet which shows maybe for this current fiscal year we're in, Councilmember McIntyre, what is our revenue source based on property tax, sales tax, other fees, things like that. Also, you brought up a good point about the town hall. We have bonding debt, and we also have installment sales, which have become extremely popular in the last few years, and I can talk offline if you want to know why that is. But we want to look at that debt sheet, if you will, and see if some of that stuff could be paid down early. We just don't know what that contract is. We will report back to this board and then get some guidance from the board as to whether you want to continue to pay that out or just look at doing an accelerated pay down. I think those were the major things. The mayor asked about sales tax receipts by towns in Union County and the county itself. We can certainly provide that. Did I miss anything on the list? Okay.
And you got down here, we're going to take a break. Does anybody want to take a break, or do y'all want to keep moving?
I'm ready to move.
You want to take a break, Todd? Yes, sir, real quick. All right, let's take a 5-minute break then.
Okay.
Let's go to, where are we now?
Where are we now? Okay. I want to run through the first two bulletized items very quickly, and then we'll spend more time on the remaining three before we go to department head presentations. Last year, the board looked at what were the emerging issues and what were the priorities. Anytime you do a budget, whether you realize or not, you got to have some sort of priority that you're shooting for, whether it's to get a new house or a new car, and you put your money behind that. And those priorities can shift from community to community. You know, some communities may have a shortage of housing and they want to spend their money on that. Others may look at transportation, etc. So I sent you a document the other day just for a quick peruse. We're not going to discuss it, but the priorities that were developed, and I think these are the priorities you want to move forward with, is roads and infrastructure, which we've talked about, continuing to focus on public safety, trying to manage the growth. I've heard many of you talk about concerns over how fast the town is growing and how we manage that, and continuing to build the downtown. And you'll hear Brandy talk about something like that and how that ties into Indian Trail Road, which also ties into our infrastructure. And then just continuing to develop the staff, continuing to look at partnerships and parks, and just basically offering good service to everyone. And I wanted to see if the board had any other priorities maybe that I've overlooked, or if that looks like this is where we want to be.
Anybody? I think
We're good?
you
Wait,
good.
wait, there's somebody.
I'd still like to, whether or not this is on topic or not, continue to look at a business development person for the town.
Yes, sir, we're working on that, and I can
Okay.
talk about that now if you would like.
Yeah, I'd like to.
Okay, just very briefly, I've had some conversations with Chris Platté. Chris is your County Economic Development Director, and now that I'm back from medical leave, I want to sit down and talk about how this person would interrelate with the county, okay? Why is that important is because the North Carolina Department of Commerce, typically when they deal with incentives and things like that, they typically do it at the county level. The other thing that I'll mention to you is as we start to look at development coming in, whether it's retail or industrial or light industrial, one thing this town has not done is to look at any kind of economic incentive policy. So that's where we are. We've got the job description written up. I wanted to sit down with him to make sure that we're working in tandem and not at cross purposes.
Go ahead, Todd.
Yeah, I know in the budget we're going to have an economic developer, and, I noticed the Union County Economic Board just announced a distribution center for FedEx is coming here, and this impacts people of Indian Trail getting jobs, and also over at the industrial park, which is right on the outskirts of Indian Trail at the airport. Darnell has announced a $16 million expansion to their plant. And I'm sure it had nothing to do with my wife just started working there, so, but,
I'm sure.
But it is, I think, like you said, important that our person come in and work with these groups. And I think the city of Monroe may have done some incentives on some of those, and if we can get involved in that, I think would be highly advantageous for the citizens here.
Thank
So,
you.
yeah, thank you.
And the other thing,
Miss-
The incentive would be a tax break.
you can't do a tax break. Sometimes it's paid, there's various things. I can't forgive taxes. Sometimes there's a grant rebate system that's tied into certain benchmarks.
Okay.
Dennis?
One thing that's always helpful as far as light industrial park is to be able to offer a pad-ready type area, and that's something that we need to look at as we can, if there's any way the town, and let's face it, Monroe's been very successful over at the airport with their facilities, so if there's any way that when we get this economic development person that we can research some property and have some pad-ready options for people to come in, because let's face it, commercial pays a nice tax rate, they pay a lot of water runoff, and they use very little services. So these other things are great that they came into the county, but on a tax basis, that doesn't benefit Indian Trail. Still have people leaving Indian Trail to go someplace to work, and I'd like to find an opportunity for people to stay in Indian Trail and have good income type jobs.
Just one quick question, or one point. Mr. McLaurin, Mr. Platté is actually the chairman of the Economic Development for North Carolina. I think he sits on the board that he sits right now.
Right.
So that would be helpful for us. In regards to that, does the town own any industrial land that you know of?
I'm going to ask Brandy. We don't own any land, but Brandy, is there any land in the town that's zoned industrial?
Sure, there's land that's zoned industrial, but not that the town owns.
All right, so it's in private hands then.
Correct.
All right, thank you.
We have 3 industrial parks in town, right, that are not full,
We do, that's correct.
and they have, room for growth?
They're actively developing. We've got a lot of projects in those industrial parks that are filling up, but there still is space.
Right, so we do have 3 industrial parks, so the public will know we do have industrial parks. Thank you, Ms. Dees.
Any other questions?
Go ahead, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, move up.
Now, let me comment on a couple things. Earlier this week, the North Carolina Main Street Conference was held in town, and what does that mean for you is that I saw some of the attendees who were downtown managers and business retention or business recruitment folks. because while we try to recruit industry and business, I think it's also important that we look after the businesses that we have so that we help make them successful, so that if they want to expand because they are invested here. The other thing to think about is we've got a number of donut holes, making sure that those industrial areas, if they're in a donut hole, that we work with the county to try to bring them into the town. The last point I'll make is if you look at across North Carolina, most of your major projects, they start at the county level and work with the city. For example, if you go up Highway 321 like you're going to Hickory, off to the right, you'll see the Lincoln County Industrial Park, which Lincoln County has done a marvelous job. And so there are a number of examples. So it's important that we work in tandem with the county because that way we both can be successful.
Okay.
Okay. The next item just deals with mission, vision, and value statement. We're not going to spend any time really talking about that. I'm simply going to make a request that we be allowed to work with staff, and if some of you would like to contribute some ideas on what a simple mission, vision, and value statement should be for the town as a whole, we're certainly eager and would like to do that. It doesn't have to be complicated, but at least it lets everybody know this is what the town of Indian Trail is about. Yes, sir?
Go ahead, Tom. Go ahead. Yes.
The mayor, he has to make a
Go ahead.
You know, I don't want no problem. So, anyway, since we're Indian Trail, and I've been part of several companies and corporations' mission statements, maybe we should put together something like a Trailblazer theme, where we're resilient and blazing forward, the staff and council, and keeping and maintaining Indian Trail a top 15 place to live. That would kind of be my focus on a mission statement. And I'm sure Ms. Ball over there probably could put up together something a lot more better than I did. So why don't we turn it over to our wonderful communications department would be my suggestion. So
I have no objection. That would be fine with me.
I feel like I'm in court now. No objection. Okay.
Blazing
Appreciate
to the
that.
future.
Anything about anybody else? Okay. Go ahead.
Okay. Stretch for just a minute. I got a little cramp in my leg. All right. What we want to do on this next item is you should have, everybody has this spreadsheet right here.
I got the same one.
Yeah, everybody should have a ledger-sized paper printed on one side and stapled on the lower right-hand corner. Last year, when we were here, we talked about a capital improvement plan, and we talked about the importance of the capital improvement plan. And this past fall, y'all approved some projects, and we were very excited about that, and we're getting those off the ground. But we felt that we needed to take a longer-term view and a more comprehensive view. And we wanted to review with you several projects that we already see in the mix. And we're not going to read them line by line. I'm going to hit them, kind of big picture. I have Todd and Adam behind me that will fill in anything that I might be missing. But we want to start to use this as a type of dashboard so that we can keep you informed as to what kind of progress we're making. When we put together the list, we identified basically 28 projects. Some are very large projects, some are very small projects. And we tried to, putting this sheet together, identify the type of project as you see, which is park, can be either paid out of the bond funds that you've got, the $1.9 million bond funds or stormwater funds, transportation funds, or just general funds. But also, we wanted to let you know a little bit of a description and what stage of development it is in, and also whether it's fully funded. Now, when we go down the list, you look at Indian Trail Road, you're going to say, McLaurin, we thought Indian Trail Road was fully funded. Well, part of it is the center part that we have been talking about for some time. But if you remember, a few months ago, we agreed to do the whole road, so that's why it has a no. As I go through this list, if there are some projects that you would like to make sure we try to put on the agenda to get funding from y'all, we're certainly willing to do that. We have another meeting on April 2nd. If in between that, as you look at that, if you want to add some more projects, we can.
I know that Indian Trail Road's partially funded. What would it take, Todd, to fully fund that road?
Well, I was going to touch on that a little bit when I come
Oh, you
up.
were? Okay.
Yes,
Okay.
we
I got
that
a little
then.
preemptive strike there, sorry.
That's okay.
All right.
Can I ask a quick question, Mr. Manager?
Yes, sir.
What would really be helpful as you're going through this would be an amount,
Okay.
because it gives you an idea as to sort of what you're asking for. For instance, Ms. Sandberg is asking about the fully funding the entire road, which is a very good idea. But what if we want to do something else? Do we know, like, is that something readily available, or you have an idea? Because the thing is, as you're going through, it would really help to know. We know what our debt, what our external debt is. You just gave us the spreadsheet, which is really, really
Right.
good. But then, if we could find, as you're going through, what the cost of some of these are, even if they're fully funded or unfunded or partially,
Okay.
that would really help. I don't know if you have that readily available.
I don't think I have that ready for all the projects.
Okay.
But but what we can do is, as we go through the list, if there's something that you say, hey, we'd like to know some more information, we could come back with some cost
All right.
if that's helpful to you.
Yep.
Okay. As you can see, Chestnut Square Park, we are upgrading the security. We are in the process of putting broadband into the parks, along with security cameras. We've also got that gravel parking lot that we have talked about. There's a $200,000 price tag if we want to gravel the parking lot. We're just waiting. If the board's interested, we can go ahead and move forward with that. We've got the power upgrades. We've got sidewalks that we're working on. And what we do is when we do a project, we got the pre-planning, then the planning, then the design, and that's where the true cost comes in. And once we get the design cost, then we can pull the trigger once the board is ready to go with it. Stormwater, as I go through this, then I'll ask Todd or Adam if they have any comments they want to make. Project number 6 is sign enhancements. That's going to be the state money that you heard about, the $50,000 that we'll be working with. Crossing Paths Park, I've talked to, I think, Councilmember McIntyre. We had originally focused that several years out. I think you're wanting to go ahead and move forward on that. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's my opinion, but I have 5 other members who would have to opine on that as well.
Okay. Would y'all like us to move forward on something like that, bring you back some ideas on what you would like to see at Crossing Paths Park?
What I did mention to the manager, when I spoke to him, was that Mr. Kramer had brought in some information on the shelter for when we have the hits after 6 and some of the other things to make it a little more, so that the equipment for the band or the performers doesn't get wet, because it seems to be a real hit, if I can, no pun intended, of course, with the residents.
Yeah, I'd be on board with maybe enclosing that thing in, from a rain perspective, it's just got the roof there, and I know I think it was donated by Rotary, so
Yeah.
I don't think the town had any cost on there, and of course, since I did Rotary, I got to plug in the little playground back there that Lions Club did, so get my plug in on that, so, but I would, was that what you was thinking, maybe enclosing in that in, so?
Yes, sir.
I mean,
I was
if
gonna
it starts
say-
to rain, then.
Yeah, because that park's not very big. I don't know how much more you could put in there, other than
Yeah.
what you're talking about, amphitheater, if you will.
Exactly.
So I don't know how doable it is or cost effective, but it'd be worth looking into.
We could look at some ideas and some cost and bring that back. I always look at that park as being, if you're familiar with Freedom Park in Charlotte, the symphony used to go out on Sunday afternoon and they would have free concerts. They've since moved over to South Park, but I could see where you have a Union County Symphony, I believe, that could could do some really nice stuff out there. So, and with the connecting path from Town Hall, people could park and walk over, and it's really a no-brainer. Holly Park, we talked about that a few months ago. Since then, $250,000 has come in from the state for us to look at what can go out there. I know there's interested, I think, in pickleball. We don't know if full park development in Holly Park, if $250,000 will cover everything. So that's why we have a no on that. Once we get it designed, assuming the board wants to continue to move forward with that, we can come back, see what the cost is, and then decide how much we want to supplement to make that happen.
Oh, keep moving. I'm sorry.
I think the mayor pro tem.
I'm sorry. I keep waiting on the mayor to do something.
You know.
and I can't, so
Old habits die
I
hard.
apologize.
Oh, it's hard, man.
Go ahead.
You are the mayor, man.
I like the idea of the pickleball courts in Holly Park, and I'd like to move that up and get it funded and get it done, because I think when we met with Mr. McLam and, was like the total cost estimated like $500,000, 250 was gonna heat about half of it, correct?
Yeah, so we pulled some costs a couple of years ago, and obviously costs have shot up over the last 4 years, so, as Town Manager Warren mentioned, we have $250,000. $500,000 is probably more realistic, but I don't want anyone to lock in on that number without us talking with some folks that have recently done projects.
Right, so since we're getting half the money from the state, then I don't know about everybody else, but I'd like to see that move forward.
I'm a Holly Park resident, and I've had a couple people that found out about it. I don't know how they found out about it. I guess maybe they watched the video or on YouTube or what have you. They showed interest in the pickleball park, so I'm for it too.
Well, let me add something. I'm not sure we can vote on anything. We can make a consensus of whether or not can we not do
Well,
that?
to move
Just say, hey,
forward, right?
Well, I don't think we can vote on it.
Let me make a comment.
Well-
But here,
Yeah, kind of
let
consensus on
me
the
get an
pickleball
answer to
court.
this first. Go ahead.
Okay.
McIntyre, or you got, and I mean, everybody kind of, what they designed, I like what the staff did, that's kind of just like to push it forward.
We're not necessarily looking for votes right now. We're looking for guidance so we
Right.
can start to move
So is a
forward.
consensus okay? I mean, this,
We do not need a consensus. Mr. McLaurin is making notes on the projects you'd like to
Okay,
see in
all
the
right.
budget, and then he'll bring those forward with more information.
all right.
Dennis had a comment.
Yeah, and so did,
I've had discussions with a couple of people over at Holly Park, and one of them, I guess, came from the HOA president, and I was shocked because I thought that pickleball would be great over there, but they've got concerns about pickleball. I don't know if it's the lighting or the traffic or whatever. So I guess what we need to do is discuss with the HOA and some of the other residents. So I was really surprised that there'd be pushback on it. So, I guess the best thing to do is just contact the folks at the HOA and see
I
what
can
Uh,
they
get
want.
with them, Dennis. My father-in-law used to be on the HOA, so I can get with them.
Yeah.
I know Susan very well.
Mr. Mayor, I think Councilmember McIntyre, do you have a comment or a question?
No, I mean, Mr. Barber, I think, asked the question that you need to kind of come back to us with that, and then we'll move forward. I'm good.
I think Adam was getting ready to make a comment earlier on.
Two different things. One, I was going to say, when we had those meetings, one thing that we talked about is at that park, it wouldn't just be pickleball. We had always talked about, it will have some small, probably playground, some kind of walking trails or walking path like around the edge of it. It'll also probably have some kind of shelter, gazebo, something for all ages. We're not trying to just make something for one group. There's also another piece of property that the town owns over there that doesn't touch that piece, but is off of an old, was supposed to be a right-of-way, and it turned into, we put a cul-de-sac there. And I know, Councilmember Gay, you had sent over an email a month or two ago that mentioned like public art and walking and things like that. Those are all things that we can incorporate into any, and those had come from the HOA. Those are all things that we can incorporate into any design that we, ultimately come up with.
Very good. And just a quick comment. you know, it's not a pickleball stadium or a massive pickleball where it's going to create traffic or anything like that. You know, think of it as your tennis court in your neighborhood. You know, there's not traffic for that. And as a matter of fact, a lot of tennis courts are pickleball courts. You may want to put a tennis court there and you know, there is a pickleball court inside of a tennis court. I have no idea how y'all want to do that. But anyway, concern about traffic or a lot of people going there, it's not, like you say, it's going to be multi-purpose. And when you go to the park, the people who play tennis there are not crowding the park. Go ahead.
And y'all can ask Hayden this question later because he can answer it better than I can. But there are different levels of parks. So you have like your little neighbor, you have your HOA neighborhood parks, then you have neighborhood parks from a municipal level, and then you have bigger parks like Crooked or Chestnut, and then you have regional parks like Colonel Beatty and go to even bigger, you know, so there's different levels. And we wouldn't be looking at building a Crooked Creek over there. That's not what we're trying, you know, we'd ever be trying to do over there.
Okay, well, let's move on. So,
Okay. Shady Bluff, I think we're on go for that one. I just want to mention the South Fork Crooked Creek Greenway. You know, there's a couple Greenway things here. We're finding out that those are some of the most popular amenities that you can offer your citizens. In Mecklenburg County, they're getting ready to spend $8 million on extending the 4 Mile Creek Greenway. And as you develop a greenway network, you will be surprised at the number of people that you will see out there walking, jogging, biking, and everything else. So excited and encourage you to try to continue to push that. Chestnut Parkway 3, I think you're familiar with that. That is connecting road to Gribble Road. This is something we're doing with the state. Phase 1 is the road that exists. I think the state's doing phase 2 and we're doing phase 3. Poplar Glen, they're in the process of doing some design on that. Town hall upgrades, I've talked about this a couple of times. We are in the process of trying to get a generator for the building. Some of our security systems need to be upgraded because, as I understand, and Adam, correct me if I'm wrong on this, the way they built the building and the wiring, it's a little bit more complicated than originally imagined, and we sent an RFP or RFQ out for someone that can assist us with that.
That's correct. We're hoping at the next council meeting, we'll actually bring back that RFP for y'all to approve to move forward with that contractor. And that'll be to just start doing all the things on this list.
Indian Trail Road, I've already talked about that. Old Monroe Road Park, we've got 2 pieces of land. One is 11 acres near the new ABC store, and there's a little tiny section up like you're going towards Stallings off to the left. One of the things, and we're waiting for land design to produce a report we've asked them to look at, is look at some of the property we've got and what are some potential park development. So once we get that, we will send that to you. The biggie on the next page, 17, you see that. We've talked earlier about expanding or enhancing the sheriff's office facility across the way, but we can't do that till we get a new park and public works facility. We are in conversations with the state about some property. We will keep you in the loop. They have told us it's not a quick process, but this is a need that needs to be met. We've got a number of sidewalk projects that you can see there. None of them are funded. If there are some that you feel like you would like us to take a look at and start to try to get some prices, we can certainly bring that back. At this point, let me stop and see if Adam or Todd has any comments they'd like to offer on the list.
Yeah, I'd just like to mention to y'all and give y'all kind of a brief overview of where we're at. It's kind of a dynamic situation right now when it comes to cost of construction projects and stuff. Obviously, gas prices have gone up, and they're going to continue to go up, it seems like. That affects that contractor in multiple ways, from buying the asphalt to, traveling to the job site, putting, fuel in the equipment and everything else. So all these costs are going to be drastically higher right now until this gets calmed down. And obviously, we don't know what's going to happen with the war and everything else that's going on. But and then you've got concrete. Right now, there's not enough concrete plants in this area for the demand. And there's not going to be. Charlotte doesn't want people building concrete plants in their area. So with this federal funding, like the ARP fund, coming down to all these towns and all these cities, I mean, everybody's is going to want to build projects. There's not enough contractors out there right now to build these projects. So projects are going to get higher, and we can do our best to give you numbers, but I just want you to know those numbers could be higher. Now, do we, look at possibly, and also delays. For instance, material, right now to get a concrete pipe, it takes several months of ordering. So we may have to come to you for a project and say, look, we need to go ahead and buy this now, ahead of time, to get it on, sit it on one of our town properties and let it sit there, just so it doesn't delay the project when this project starts. Because again, it's going to impact scheduling. You want to see things being done, but I'm telling you right now, it's going to be hard to get things done unless we think outside the box or we're prepared to pay a premium. So I just want to make y'all aware of that.
That's good stuff.
Adam, do you have any thoughts?
I'll actually talk a little bit about the back of the sheet, all the to-be-determined projects, or all those sidewalk projects. So this is probably the first time that y'all have seen all those projects on a CIP list, and you're kind of going, where did those come from? So if you go back to the last budget season, when we were approving the CIP, one thing that we talked about was the town years ago, Todd and I were both project managers on them, did some really big sidewalk projects. We did Unionville Indian Trail Road, we did Rogers Road, we did Sardis Road, we did really big projects. Since that time, our sidewalk connectivity has been something that's kind of been on the back end while we've been planning for all the other big roadway projects and the big greenway projects and things like that. So starting to push those back forward, council approved to potentially look at $100,000 a year just as a starting place to push some smaller projects, connection projects. Think of like one of them that's on here is like in front of Bonterra, connecting the existing sidewalk to where the bypass just built their sidewalk. There's some over around Taylor Glen, like connecting like little sections near Brook Valley, so that people that use different neighborhoods can actually walk on the sidewalk. You're not having, that's what all these projects are, but there's no funding for any of these projects other than that $100,000, unless if council wants to speed up any of those projects. But then you go to what Todd just said, and we'll work. I think, Marcus, you had a good idea to potentially add in the cost and the cost of what we know it is and the cost of what to completely fully fund it may be, because that'll give an idea.
And I think everybody up here, if I can speak for myself and them, these projects, we know the cost is not static. It is going to change because there are a lot of other variables, including fuel, war, material availability, labor force and so forth. So we do understand that, but it will help us, being honest with you, with doing these. Councilman Mbergi has mentioned quite a bit in terms of people within the community seeing different things done. While roads is always, something that we want to get done, some of these projects in terms of connectivity will really help. So if we can get the cost on some of these, because we do have an additional 6.35 million coming in August, and I think that is these funds could be tied to some of these projects as well. I'm not speaking for certain, but I am going to hazard a guess and think that that could probably be the case. So that would really help. In particular, as we're going to meet in April for the second budget session, that would really help if we can get some of that, because then we can really move some of these things up on here and get that going.
So I think what I'm hearing you say is you would like to go ahead and try to get a cost to kind of fill some of this in and then bring that back maybe on April 2nd. And then maybe
that's what I said, but you have to ask them if they're okay with that.
I'm okay with that, 100%.
One thing that's not on the list, it's not really a capital project, but I do want to remind the board about, is it's more of a safety thing, is we are talking to Duke Energy about trying to put streetlights on Highway 74 through the town of Indian Trail. We talked before, as we talk about sidewalks being a safety thing, so were streetlights. But we did not put that on there, but that's a potential cost that we'll be incurring. Okay?
Well, and if you would add to that, if I remember right, streetlights on Highway 74, and I could be wrong, is not that, it's not a lot of money to do that. It's
Not in the millions, it's just
a lot less than I originally thought.
It's an ongoing cost, but
Do you remember what it was? I mean, it was.
I couldn't tell you exactly, but it's basically a monthly cost, because what we do with streetlights is we take the total construction cost, they divide it over 5 or 10 years, and they charge that for the light going
I think
forward.
council at
So-
one point thought it was be a very expensive project, and it was
Yes,
very,
not.
And it ended up
very
being-
inexpensive to do.
It's a long process, not just with Old Monroe Road, with Highway 74, but as we look at other roads around town, there are other roads that are dark, main traveling roads. It's just a process, because you have to work with DOT, then you have to work with the power company, then you have to go back with DOT, and then the final construction is actually done by the so it's just a back and forth for a while.
But if I remember, was it it was a monthly infinite cost though, right?
It is. It
Yeah.
is a monthly infinite
I
cost.
think that was the drawback.
That- Yes.
Yeah,
But it would be an infinite cost no matter what. Every streetlight that we have in town is an infinite cost. I think in
Right.
this year's budget, we
Yeah.
budgeted about 420,000, 420, 440, something like that for streetlights around town. So that's in neighborhoods, on major roadways, any streetlights that's in a public right-of-way that the town has. That's that
But
cost.
sometimes the DOT does streetlight enhancements on their own roads, so
Cool.
I didn't know if it's thing that we're rolling the dice, hoping they'll do it one day, or, because we can't predict that, but.
Yeah, I didn't want to say that's a capital cost, but I knew that there had been interest on the council, and
Sure.
as you start to do connectivity, that ties into safety, okay? All right, we will get the cost and have you something back in April, so we would certainly appreciate your input on that. We are running pretty far ahead of schedule, but if the board is interested in continuing to move, we will.
Can we get a 5-minute bathroom break at least?
You want a 5 minute, so, okay, let's take a
Okay.
break.
Thank you. Just a bathroom break.
We've got American Rescue Funds before
Yep.
we get to that. We
Oh,
took a
okay,
break
so
a
we have
little
one
early.
more.
All
I'm
right,
sorry.
let me speak for just a minute. If I may, Mr. Mayor, pertaining to lunch.
Well, you've not interjected anything yet, so go ahead.
We're running pretty far ahead of schedule, and so we're going to check to see if maybe we can be out of here by 12. If so, we'll
Cancel that
cancel
lunch.
lunch. If
Yeah.
not,
That's good.
lunch will be, will be picked up about 11:15 or 11:20, and you can take it home. So we'll just see whichever way that works. Okay? We're good?
You want her to cancel it? She's on the phone with them.
Can we cancel it? All right, well, let's move on if we can. Which is good that we're running ahead of schedule. All right. We mentioned earlier in our meeting today, we talked about the state funds. And at this point, I'm going to turn it over, I think, to Adam and Jim to talk about where we are on those funds. Adam, you ready?
Sure. So on the state funds, you saw this graphic earlier. This will be pretty quick because Jim already kind of did all this, which is what we were planning on. We talked about these 3 different categories and the funds for each one of them. One thing Councilmember Ambergy brought up earlier about the dates on here. You've heard us talk about dates a little bit now with Todd and just different things. But what we're trying to do is we're trying to set target dates for us to shoot for, because if we don't have anything to shoot for, we won't know if we made it or not. So these right now are our best guess on what we think we could do to complete these projects. You can see some of them are completed in the next year, or in this year or in the next year or so, and some of them are rolling into 2 or 3 years out. So the signage improvements, that's a relatively quick one that we can get working on. I'll work with Abby And we'll get those signs kind of drafted up, and we'll kind of know what we want, and then we can get those printed up. That'll update most of our wayfinding signs around town and add some of the ones that we've had to take down over time for construction projects. Going to Holly Park, I won't talk any more about that, but we would like to push that project along and get that completed next year, if at all possible. Indian Trail Road, I am missing a slash there. It is not going to be completed in 012025. Then we've got Shady Bluff. Like you saw, Todd's hoping to get that one done, completed next year. Then we roll into the resurfacing. Remember, we decided out of the state funds to put an extra $1 million on resurfacing, so that'll be $1 million in the FY23, $1 million extra dollars in the FY23 budget, and another extra $1 million in the FY24 budget. So that'll put us at about next year resurfacing about over $2 million next year and the year after. So that'll be a really robust, hopefully, resurfacing projects. And then the last one there, as Mike mentioned earlier, Indian Trail Road, that's to do the rest of Indian Trail Road, but that still leaves us short on our funding, probably somewhere in the neighborhood of $2 to $3 million, and that's not quite knowing, like Todd mentioned, about what those budgets are going to actually be when we get there. But you remember the middle portion, and then we've got, that's a third, and then you've got 2/3 being the other two sides. So that's kind of where we're at with that.
Adam,
Yes,
question, please. I'm sorry. Those two, what did you say, 2 to 3 million?
That's a very round guess while we're sitting here
But
today.
where can we draw that from to complete that road?
So let us finish going through this as we go to the ARPA funds and as we start talking about just general finances wide. I think we'll start to answer that question.
Okay, thank you.
Is that okay?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Are there, Mr. Mayor, is there any questions from the council?
Any more questions? No?
Keep in mind, one of the things we're working with the Indian Trail Road is there's an interlocal agreement with Atrium Health, town of Stallings, and the town of Indian Trail. When they built the new hospital, they had to do a traffic impact study, and they said that intersection fell within the area, and so that agreement is being finalized as we speak. So if the council's ready, we'll go ahead and move on to the ARPA funds.
Okay.
I did want to say one more. You can go ahead and. I just wanted to say one more thing. I don't remember if I told council this already. I did reach out to Senator Johnson after we had approved all the projects, or y'all had approved all the projects that you wanted to do, and talked through each one of those with him. And he was very excited about all those projects because he has heard for years that transportation, as all of y'all have heard, is a big sore subject. So he was very excited that all the projects that were chosen were transportation-driven projects. So.
Very good. Go ahead.
And we will be inviting the local delegation to come, I think, to one of our April meetings for the council to formally thank them for their work.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Okay. Let's move on over to the American Rescue Plan Act, known as ARPA. And Adam, if you'll continue to work with that, you and Jim are our point folks on it.
So I want to start out this conversation just saying ARPA is still a moving target. It is still not known everything that what the money can and can't be spent on. It's still, we hear new things. We're still waiting for stuff to come down from the state. So the information that we give you is the best information that we have today. It could change. It could change for the better, or it could change for the worse. But what we're trying to do is to keep y'all as up to date as we are. So I'm going to go over a few slides. This is actually the biggest PowerPoint that y'all have today to kind of follow along. But the reason for that is it does have so many moving pieces and moving parts, and it is a large sum of money that the town has to be able to spend. So when ARPA first came out, go back to, it's called American Rescue Plan Act. Yes. It was brought down, and the reason for it was to combat the negative effects of COVID-19 virus. That is what the federal government. That's the reason why they passed ARPA. When it was first passed, the interim rule came in May of 21. Again, go back to the town knew at that time how much money we were going to get, and we were really hopeful that that money was going to be able to be spent on anything we wanted it to be spent on. What we found out is that was not the case. It was frustrating to try and read and understand, which made it unclear, inflexible. Tons of reporting requirements, as you've heard us talk about. And that's kind of the reason why we are where we are today and haven't really moved on any of that money, is because we had to wait till we knew a little bit more about what was going on. So the final rule came down in January of 2022. And again, if y'all have any questions, jump in. Jim, if I say something wrong, you jump in too. With that came some really significant changes, some of that we had hoped of from the beginning. And that was that we've already talked about with y'all at other times, was that $10 million that was allowed to be taken in revenue replacement. What that will allow us to do is it can actually supplant other general purpose funds, and it allows for a lot more flexibility. So now we're going to talk a little bit more about how these funds kind of roll in. So remember, we've talked about this, and I want to make sure that we mention it again. ARPA funds come down to the town, but it doesn't mean that we can do everything that's listed in the ARPA funds, because in North Carolina, we still have to follow North Carolina law, and we still have to follow town requirements and town laws. So all the funds have to be used for general government services. Make sure that's general government services, something that we are allowed to spend town funds on. It's the only thing that we can spend them on. We have to follow uniform guidance and document and reporting guidelines. Want to make note, Mike actually already mentioned this earlier. Economic incentives is not something that we can use these funds for. So they can't just be like given to a business to come into town. That's not something they can be used for. Something else that we found out that they couldn't be used for that was kind of interesting is they can't be used for debt service. So y'all were talking about paying off, debt. These funds can't be used for that. They can't be used to just sit in your bank account. They want you to spend these funds. So we have some pots of places that they came down that these funds have to be spent in. There's 5 of those. So you have public health, you have economic impact, you have that lost revenue one. We talked about that's the $10 million. You have premium pay, and you have infrastructure. So we're going to talk a little bit about some steps along the way. So again, remember the first rule came out in 21. The money has to all be spent by December 31st of 26. That doesn't mean still trying to spend it. That means dollar for dollar, you've got to give it back. Has to be spent by that time. So there's a lot of steps along the way that we're having to go through from a staff level, and that y'all will have to go through from a board level of approving things. One of those we actually have already done, and that's the grant project ordinance. Due to Jim and his staff, they've gotten that through to council. Council's approved that grant project ordinance. There's some rules and policies and everything that we have to adopt before we can spend any funds. Community engagement, selecting of funds, and then funding actually the projects and completing the projects. I'll talk while we're on this slide before I go to the next one about community engagement. So community engagement, because we are less than 250,000 residents, ARPA does not require by the letter of the law that we do community engagement. But it does strongly recommend that you do let your community have some engagement into what you are spending these funds on. So break down some of those steps. So as we look at adopting policies, there's about, roughly right now, we can kind of look at rules and things that there's about 10 or so different policies that we're going to have to adopt. Jim has worked to send about 2 or 3 of those already through Karen to get approved. Karen's looked at those, and we'll be bringing those to you shortly. There's also sub-parts of ARPA that we have to be able to follow, and we have to make sure that we're following every guideline. If we give any of these funds to another agency, they have to follow every guideline that we follow. They have to adopt every policy that we've adopted, and they have to adopt every, ARPA requirement that we adopt. So that means they're held to the same standard that we're held. If for some reason they mess up with those funds, we could be responsible for paying those funds back. We have the ability to be audited by the federal government for up to, I think it's up to 10 years. I know it's at least 5, but I think I read 10 years. There's also some pretty strict requirements that if, something is messed up with the funds, that it limits your ability to get funds in the future from the federal government. Todd gets a lot of funds that come down for some of the projects he's working on that come through the federal government and come down to us a different way through CRTPO or different things. So that's why we're making a big deal about making sure that we follow all the guidelines as we move through this. So now let's talk about the fun part. This is the part you actually want to talk about. All that other stuff you want us to handle, and all this is the stuff that y'all want to handle. So we got $12.7 million. We received half of those funds August 20th of 21, and we hope to receive the other half July or August of 22 of this year. I say hope just because we just don't know exactly the date that it's going to hit the bank. We can use the funds for anything occurred between March 30th of 21 through, we have to obligate the funds or encumber the funds by December 31st of 24, and again, spend the funds by 26. So now let's make a couple of recommendations, and then this is where we'll open it up to council to have some discussions now and as we go into the next budget meeting. So we have $10 million that the best course of action would be to pull those down as revenue loss. Take those in that one pot. So you're going to take 10 million of the 12.7 in one pot. But the suggestion to actually do with those funds is to actually supplant the money that we would use to pay the sheriff's department for the next 2.5 years based off of what we know what their budget kind of will be. That then frees up $10 million of town funds, general funds, to be used on other projects. The reason why we're making that recommendation is what that does is that relieves some of that administrative burden from Jim and his staff to actually have to follow all of those guidelines from ARPA on 20 or 30 different projects. For the 10 million, they're only going to have to submit or work through 2.5 report. They're only going to have to do those reports. But we are still going to have the $10 million to do projects that the council or the public has talked about wanting to do. But we don't have to follow all of the guidelines from ARPA, but they still have to be general government services that the town is allowed to do. These are some of those projects that we have already heard from council. We've heard fire trucks, we've heard VFW roof replacement, we've heard athletic associations, other transportation projects, and that's a very broad term. Sheriff's Department, 2 different things, building upgrades and also other capital needs that they talked about. We've heard civic organizations. Jim has gotten a couple of applications from a couple of different, well, not applications, I use that term loosely, requests for funds, and then anything else that y'all or the public can think of. So I'll keep going and then we can come back if we want to. Again, I did make a note on there. I want y'all to understand things that are on this list doesn't mean that it's a fundable thing from the town standpoint. It just means that it's on this list right now. It means that we've heard you and heard what you had to say. Now we still have $2.7 million that has to be spent in one of these 4 buckets. Because remember, we 12.7, pulled 10 for revenue, Can't look at that bucket anymore, so now we've got 4 buckets that are left. When you look at the requirements of those 4 buckets, it would be our recommendation that you'd be looking at these 2 buckets that you see on your screen on the right. I guess we see it that way too. One note I want to make about infrastructure, that's not infrastructure. Roadway is not allowed. That is not an allowable use for ARPA funds. It's broadband, water and sewer, or stormwater. Those are kind of the general requirements that they put on as infrastructure.
Can you repeat those again, sir?
Sure. Broadband, which in North Carolina, that's actually, this is where you go back to that falling from federal down to local level. Broadband's actually a hard one to do in North Carolina, and Mike can speak more to that. Water, sewer, and stormwater.
And what are the requirements? What are the things for premium pay?
So premium pay is forward-facing employees. And for the town, that would actually be everybody in the town as a forward-facing employee.
That's all it covers? Only forward-facing employees?
I can give you the exact definition.
I think Jim has put together some figures if the board's interested in pursuing, if the council's interested in pursuing some of that.
Thank you. Did you want to go first, Dennis?
Well, just a question on infrastructure, water and sewer. We don't have water and sewer, that's county. So can this go from the town to the county toward water and sewer for projects?
It potentially could. They would be a sub-recipient of the towns. I will let you know, though, that the county received way more funds than we did.
Okay.
Now, I'm not telling you that the board couldn't decide to send money to the county, but they did.
Okay.
They received a substantial, a lot more money than what we did.
Okay.
Do what? Yeah. So I'll let Jim talk about the premium pay kind of ballpark figure thing, and then I'll move on.
Yep, thank you. Premium pay, basically, Mike had everybody come back to work July 1st of 2021. So basically, we did a down and dirty calculation between the COLA and basically what the cost of living is now. So we took an average, we have 44 full-time employees in the town. So we took an average salary, we took the differential between, say, what the COLA would be, say 3.5%, inflation's 7.5%. We took that 4% differential, came up with a down and dirty calculation of about $2,000 an employee. So that would be 44 employees times 2,000. And that would be non-regressive, so people like on the lower end, like Adam, on the lower end of the scale, versus people that make more money. Just a ballpark figure.
Go ahead, Marcus.
So when you talk about this premium pay, you're talking, this only applies to employees at town hall, not the entire population of the town.
No, so yes, that's correct. I'll give you the definition. It's provide premium pay for essential workers, offering additional support to those who have borne and bear the greatest health risk between their services and critical infrastructure sectors. The money was given to the town, so that's where that money has to sit.
All right, so you roughly $88,000 roughly.
That's a rough calculation.
Yeah, I know, yeah.
That's a
But-
back of napkin
Yeah.
It's
calculation.
very little of the premium pay is going, I mean, I don't think we need to talk a lot about premium pay because that's it, right there.
So then this is the last slide, and then we can talk about whatever you want to, or we can go back. So as we look at going forward, from here going forward, so you have, we'll kind of run concurrent processes with ARPA and with our budget process to be able to get some of that public input. We'd like to ask council and staff both to reach out to the public. As we hear things, we can throw them on a list, then we can look into, do they meet ARPA eligibility? And then in the end of this, either at your April meeting or when you adopt the budget this year, for FY '23, we'd like to also adopt this is what we're going to spend our ARPA funds on. This is from here going forward. We'll go ahead and already appropriate all of those funds. Now, it may move a little bit here or there from now till, December of '24, but this is generally where those funds are going to be spent. That'll also allow us the time for Jim and his staff to get the rest of those policies adopted and to start being ready to follow all those procedures. I know I've thrown a lot of information at you, and I threw something at you today that you hadn't heard yet. So I can answer questions, Mike can answer questions, Jim can answer questions, or we can bring information back as we need to.
Crystal?
I just have a quick question. Is there any way to put something out online or on our site to get our residents to come in and give us some feedback, and then we can kind of sort through those?
Yes, ma'am, we can do that. We've had a discussion, internal discussion, that we'll continue next week about what sort of public input process we want to do, the council would like to do. So your comments on that would be very important. The caution, I guess, that I would give is that there are so many things that don't qualify. If you got a bunch of applications and you have to tell a bunch of people no, that's a potential problem. And one thing maybe we could have a community meeting for those that might be interested. And I'm just throwing out ideas to make sure that we try to screen some of those so that whatever you do get can kind of fit in the bucket.
We can put something that fits the criteria,
Right.
That they could understand before they can read,
Yeah, and I think one of the things that your attorney has told you is that civic organizations are a tough thing to do unless there's some sort of public good that you can do. Just to give a donation is a different animal. Okay.
That's an excellent point, Town Manager, that you made about people coming in. When you open it up to the public, and just give you a quick, for instance, if you ask them what you'd like to see at a park, and you give them 5 different things, they're going to pick the thing that we all would really want, like a nature museum and all this other stuff. And I just have seen this happen in the past that cost $7 million. So you just relating back to that, you have to be very careful, because we really don't have it looks like the best thing to do, but do they understand it? It takes money to do that. So just.
Yeah, and that would probably be an internal policy we would want to talk to the council about before we put anything out to the public. Okay. If I may, Mr. Mayor, a couple comments.
Sure.
6-7 months ago, I mentioned to you, I think, that we envisioned that the rules would loosen up, and as you've seen from this presentation, in fact, it's loosened up a whole lot. You've also heard Todd talk about the cost of construction and the fact that a lot of people have gotten this money, so you're going to see the demand for these projects increase. You may see some more loosening of the rules as we go into 2023, 2024. They may extend the 2026 deadline. I don't know that they will, and I would not bank that they will. So I think the sooner we can develop our plan of action, which has the most impact for the community, the better we'll be.
Any,
Yeah, so I'm just doing a little bit of back of the napkin math here. If we go with your proposal of the 12.7 million, 10 million, we do the replacement revenue, therefore gives us more flexibility on what we want to do. Of that 10 million, we have 5.5 that we've allocated for projects. It doesn't mean that they're going to get done or approved, but it means that they're on the map. We have to figure out a way to do it following all the state and other rules, but the rules become a little easier because of the mechanism in terms of the money. That being said, we're left with a further 4.5 million that we haven't really identified yet, right?
Out of the 10
5.5
million.
out of the 10.
Yep.
5.5 plus 4.5 gives us 10. Leaves us with 2.7 million that we have a couple buckets that we can do. We have premium pay for, which is about, let's just say 100,000. That means that we have 2.6 left. 2.6 left, we have an option to go through broadband. We don't do that in town. We don't have any broadband service that we own or operate. Water and sewer, that's a county function. I'm going to be honest with you and tell you the county received a lot of money. I am not in favor of giving them money towards water and sewer. That's just me. But then the next one that we have is really, the only option, in my opinion, seems to be stormwater from a $2.6 million perspective. And we know that the chairman of the stormwater committee is here, as is Mr. Hunsinger. Is there any way that we can possibly, and I'm just asking this, that we can possibly look at some stormwater projects? Because I think when I go back to this, I see some stormwater projects on here. The cost would have been good to have. That could qualify. Is that a possibility? Because the thing is, being honest, if instead of using the revenues that we have for that, we could probably supplant those with some of these funds. So, thank you. Sorry.
Thank you. Well, what we're doing, can you hear me?
Yeah.
What we're doing right now is we just completed an RFQ for a watershed management plan. And what that's going to do is we're looking in a more proactive manner of, the future development of the town and any existing problem areas that we may have in the town due to existing or approved developments. Also, it will look at stream bank restoration potential projects. But what you're going to get out of that plan is a 5 to 10 year future CIP. And granted, it's according to what we find. It may be not a lot. It may just be 5 year. If potentially it's a lot, it'll be 10. But you'll get a good sense because there will be cost, conceptual layouts of what needs to happen, what the cost will be, what the permitting will be. We'll have all that probably within the end of this calendar year. Then what my plan is to do is to come back to y'all after that plan and start showing y'all what these costs are. And based on that timeline, I feel we can fit all that in, get potential projects online, use some of that funds if you choose to on those projects within the time frame of the 2026. So that's my plan right now. But again, I don't know how much that's going to be. It could be more than what we got, and we just have to prioritize. But I do know that there is some creeks out there that need work. But I'm using this to get a kind of a third-party opinion on those creeks, so we know for sure as a town we're not just picking as a staff. Well, we're going to fix this. No, we're going to fix that. No, we're going to prioritize it based on a third party's opinion. And that way, just like we would with our pavement condition survey with resurfacing. That's why you have that survey, that ranking, that's how we pick our roads. We don't choose them just because we want to do that road. So same deal.
Todd?
Being the lowly stormwater chair is, we have talked about this in stormwater, and I met with the town manager and Mr. Waterwidge, and what like he's talking about is the survey is we're going to do to see what potential projects we need to do, because we do, as Mr. Waterwidge said, do have kind of a build-up in the stormwater fund. So the long-term thinking on this year we do the survey, see what we got to do, see where we're at financially next year. If we still have a lot built up, then I would consider a rollback on stormwater fees or cutting them. So, and if we do use some of this for stormwater fees, it may enable that to do that. I would, and we've discussed this about, now's not the time to cut the stormwater fees. We need to see where we're at, but if we can get in that position and we're still, as Mr. Waters adequately pointed out, is we're still in that huge amount of money in that fund, then I think citizens would deserve a break. And that's kind of where we're thinking on a committee. Did I sum that up pretty good?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Hunsinger.
Go ahead.
The other thing that I would say about, you said water and sewer, we've got to do a little bit of digging, but if we do move in the direction of a public works facility, if you have to put in water and sewer to get to that facility, is that an allowable use?
Yeah.
So again, as we all talk about all the time, you try and use any bucket that you can, and I'm not talking about just these buckets, I'm talking about other buckets of funds that the town has to make a whole for a project at the best that we can do with the citizens' money.
Just a couple of comments, and I'm very happy, Todd, you're on the stormwater. You do a great job, and you're very informed about what it is. I can go back years, and stormwater's a real touchy situation, and Adam can relate to this, and Todd maybe can relate to this because you've been here a long time. But I can remember a time when people complained about we didn't get things done with stormwater. We had a town manager or whatever that didn't want to use stormwater funds. Stormwater funds, I think there's a lot of things that we can do with stormwater funds if we just do them. And the danger, I would think, would be is moving this into stormwater funds would be, and correct me if I'm wrong, is once you move it into stormwater funds, that's all you can spend it on. You can't, you won't be able to, you won't have much, way to go with it.
Correct, but one thing with these funds is they cannot be commingled with your general fund. They have to be kept in separate bank accounts. They have to be kept in completely separate of your general fund. So it would never go commingled. What it would be is we would earmark it for whatever projects came out,
Right, but I guess what I'm thinking is, I see the danger of being a little bit of moving it into those funds and not, and lowering a stormwater fee or not having a stormwater fee, where you could use this money, we don't know what for yet, for something else that, am I making any sense at all about what I'm saying? Go ahead.
Make my comments on the ARPA fund, if that's okay?
Okay.
Right now.
All right, well, I'll finish. Okay, that's all right. Yeah. No, but anyway, I just wanted to run that by. Jim, did you want to say something or not? No, you just looked like you wanted to say something. But anyway, and I understand you have to get started. You have to get started on this because you got to get it spent, so we got to come up with these things quickly. And I think it's an excellent idea, the way you about moving it to the sheriff's department, pay those up, and then that way it kind of flexes up your money on what you can spend it on. But anyway, go ahead, Todd.
I'm not going to take credit for the idea.
To the sheriff's department. I do agree with the 10 million on there, moving it, and then I'm still in agreement with the list that you gave of what we're looking into. I do agree with Councilman McIntyre that I'm not interested in giving the county. They got their own money, and they also got out of the state budget a lot of money for the water project. So I think they've been well financed, especially considering the way they distribute the sales tax. So I'm holding firm on that. And on this other 2.7 million, I know we'll look at the other 4.5 million of things we can spend it on. But at this point on the other 2.7 million, I do like your idea of looking into the public works. And I do know we've got some DOT land that we brought up, maybe could be potential down the road. And so I think expanding public works would be a great, if we can do that in infrastructure. I just want to say I'm on board with, where we're going, and I really appreciate the work y'all done on this. Thank you.
Mark?
I do have a quick question. I have been approached by some residents within the town who are on well water. They do not have county water. They've reached out to the county because the county has this extension plan, and I think, one quote they gave me was like $30,000 each person within that group, and it was probably about 30 houses had to pay in order to get that. This is a question you may not have the answer now, but if you can, is that something that we could look at in terms of people, residents of Indian Trail, meaning they're not, they're incorporated Indian Trail? Is that something that we could look at in terms of assisting them in terms of with bringing water to them, meaning county water? And also, if it's possible, is it something that we could probably have a conversation with the county about as well, in terms of, maybe partnering on that? Because being honest, if you as somebody who owns a home, to spend $30,000 to bring water to your property, that's going to be prohibitive for quite a few people. But if you don't mind trying to figure out if that's something, and I'm just asking that question, right? The council will eventually decide, but if that's a possibility or if that's feasible.
So water and sewer is an allowable use.
Well, but not the sewer, just the water.
But they're listed as two separate items.
Okay.
So water is an allowable use. So we can do the research on if it is allowed from a
to basically get
well
them connected.
perspective to a city water or county
Yeah.
water perspective. We can
Okay.
definitely look into that.
Okay. Tom?
You okay?
No,
You
go
got your
ahead, and then
cradle? Maybe I missed something. I get the 10 million we're gonna allocate for the sheriff's office, through our funding. Why did we separate the 10 million and 2.7 million instead of doing the whole act that Jim proposed? Taking the 10 million and doing it that way. Why did the 2.7 million get separated?
So we did actually, so we'll take the whole 10 million as
I'm
revenue.
talking about the 12.7.
Yep, so we have 12, go back to Mike's analogy maybe earlier. Let's use a pie again. We have 12.7. We took 10 for revenue loss. That filled that one bucket.
Okay.
That leaves 2.7 out of the 12.7 left to be spent, and it has to be spent in one of those other 4 buckets. It can't go back in the revenue loss bucket.
Okay, my fault.
But they'll
I didn't
only,
hear that.
yeah, they'll only let you take one round, let's say, of revenue loss, which is the $10 million. So go back to what Councilmember McIntyre said is there's on this list that you see on the screen, there's roughly, if all of that was fundable, there'd be about 4.5 million out of the revenue loss left that we could fund projects with.
Tom, that 10 million came from the feds. That was their number. They said, we'll give you 10 million, no questions asked for revenue replacement. So that's why we broke it out.
Okay.
That was their number.
Thanks, Jim.
Mr. Mayor. A couple quick points. Initially, when this money first came out, we had to determine how much income loss we had, and we identified $500,000. And so after they did the final rules, they said the first 10 million you can just put, as we've indicated here, into a bucket. And that frees up other money. That frees up our original 10 million, not the federal 10 million, to do with whatever we want to with our internal policy. It's kind of what supplanting, if you do grants, that's kind of how supplanting works. And so that's why we have that flexibility. The other thing I would encourage the council, this is literally a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. I don't think we will see this come about for a long, long time. And so I'm encouraging the council to think, one, strategically, and two, think long-term about where do we go 5, 10, 15 years down the road. And I really like the discussion that you've had so far and kind of thinking along those lines. The thing with the water line, Councilmember McIntyre, we can certainly look at that. I think if I could suggest maybe one caveat might be, and if we could do it, is maybe look at income limitations. If someone had a $2 million house versus someone that was hand to mouth.
Yeah, I'm gonna think that you guys will come up with a policy on what's fair and equitable.
Yep.
I just wanted to know if it's feasible.
Right.
That's really the key question here.
Right, and that's how I understood it to be. And I think the last thing I'll mention is stormwater is extremely important. I don't know how many of you are familiar with what stream restoration actually involves, but it's basically going in and increasing the efficiency of the receiving stream. They're doing a bunch of that up the road here. So I think you're on a good path, and we look forward to working with the desire of the council on that.
You got any other questions? Last thing, just real quick. I guess this would have been easy had we had $10 million in revenue loss, but we obviously did not have that. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, that with COVID, and this is the reason we have this, is we thought that with COVID that we would have a lot of revenue loss, for instance, sales tax or whatever, but we actually didn't have a big loss. We had a surplus, did we not, instead of, so that's really where this was generated from, is they just assumed that COVID had done some things that we would need. So if we would have had 10 million, it would have been easy just to fill it in there. So what you're saying, we only had $500,000 or so of actual revenue loss.
There was a formula that we put in. They had us go back 3 years, and it came out to about $500,000.
Well, that's phenomenal. And were you allowed to put in what you had revenue gains on, or just revenue losses?
We plugged in everything we had.
Okay. So with everything you had, it was a revenue loss of half. There you go.
We
Okay.
followed their rules, and that's what we came up with.
Okay, very good. All right, let's move on.
Okay, is anyone interested in the break, or do we keep moving?
Let's keep moving.
Keep moving? Okay, we have canceled lunch, by the way, I understand, so kudos to the council for their efficiency. Why don't we start with the department presentations, and Jim, you're first up.
Welcome, I already did that. Yeah, I'm going to start off with the finance department. Our mission statement is basically to protect and enhance the.
Sorry, I'm going to move you back forward.
Protect and enhance the fiscal integrity of the town. We are also responsible for accurate accounting of the receipts and disbursements of the town. My department specifically, we have 3 of us. I have 2 staff. They're fantastic. I have a senior accountant and a accounting tech. They're both great. We also work hand in hand with the tax department. Our budget requests, nothing major this year. We do have a new CPA contract. She's up about 5%, but there's more auditing this year. She's going to have to do the ARPA funds, and like I said, we were lucky to get them back. A lot of the firms are not even doing it anymore for staffing reasons. We have a small increase for our training budget. Mike's great about that. He encourages training at all levels. Now the tax department, I'm going to take theirs. She's off today. Her daughter's got a soccer tournament, but she's great. Alicia Massey runs that department. Again, she tells me there's no significant increases in their request when we go before Mike. She has a slight increase in training. She just got a new certification. But they're more than a tax department down there. They're basically, they answer the phone. They're our ambassadors. And I've been down there a lot. And people are very kind. Susan, Nancy, and Alicia. Sometimes it's the first person people see when they come into town hall. And like I said, I've heard them, people come in and they're $2 short on their taxes and they'll reach in their own pocket and pay it. That's the kind of thing they are. So, like I said, I'm blessed to oversee the departments, and I'm happy to be here. Any questions on finance?
No, you did a good job earlier, and thank you for all y'all do.
And
What's up next, Mike?
Mr. Mayor, if I could add, before we move to admin, one of the things we're doing in finance, and correct me if I'm wrong, Jim, is we're looking at software upgrades on the budget process.
Yeah, we're looking into a digital budget book next year, and that's going to be great for transparency. We're a little bit close this year to the time frame. Otherwise, we would have put it in this year, but that's going to be a nice enhancement.
Okay, without further ado, we'll move over to admin. Mr. Mayor, is everybody ready to move to admin?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, good. Not a whole lot out of our department. I will give Carrie's report. As you know, the inflation rates at 8% at last count. For the last couple of years, we've done a 3% COLA and up to a 3% merit. We've had some discussions internally about what is the best approach, and we're proposing a 3.5% COLA, which meets halfway, and the 3% up to 3% merit. But the other thing we would like the board to consider is moving our 401k contribution from 5 to 6%. Now you say, why you want to do that? Just want to remind folks that this town doesn't participate in Social Security. That gives you a break, but it also gives the employees a break. And so what we wanted to do was continue to try to raise that up a little bit. If the town ever chooses to go under the Social Security program, we could go back, or you could go back and revisit how much contribution you wanted to make. I have a real passionate feel for the employees, both when they come to work here in their 20s and whenever they retire, that we make sure that they're compensated, that we don't lose them to other places, and that whenever they do retire, that they'll have a pretty good retirement system to fall back on. The other thing that we have is in our benefit program, we cover, I think, 40% of the dependent health care premiums. We would like to move that up to 45%. Most of the surrounding towns, I understand, is at 50%, and that's the goal we would like to get to. We have some employees that can't afford family care, and it troubles me to say that, but it's a fact of life. And so we want to continually try to move that up till we hit the 50% rate. I mentioned the 401k, and I mentioned the cost of living adjustment. And so that's Carrie's report. And of course, we're going to continue. I mentioned earlier the technology upgrades. We want to speed that up. We do have the job description for the information technology person that we will be bringing to you, and we'll get that advertised. We're going to start it out advertising it at part-time. I have a suspicion that it might be hard to find someone good, and we may have to upgrade it to full-time. But as the town grows, we're going to have to stand on our own 2 feet as it relates to that. Initially, when this person gets in, they may find that the work's a little bit slow, but I'll guarantee it'll grow. Now, we talked about broadband earlier, Marcus, about why cities can't offer that service because the cable companies stopped it in the legislature. But as we look at our downtown and as we look at our parks, we've got to have someone on staff right down the hall that can speak the language that Spectrum and Windstream and those others do. And I think we can build some efficiencies in. We're not looking to do back office work of server maintenance and stuff like that. We will also be bringing you the business development, business retention. That will be coming to you at a meeting in the near future. And if there's not any questions, I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Ball, who is our communications person.
Hi, good morning. So overall, for the communications and IT budget, a lot of it will stay the same as in the past. So, my budget covers kind of a lot of the things that make the town run. So our copiers, our internet, our Verizon bill, our financial software, those sorts of things. So accounting for inflation, all of that kind of, will stay the same, just maybe increase in cost a little bit. But as Mike mentioned, there are a few technology things that we would like to, include additional resources for. Town staff and council are eligible for new cell phones every year. There's a free plan. We have a plan with Verizon, so we'll continue to update those yearly. But as far as the tablets go, that is a cost every time. So we're looking at maybe a 3-year turnaround. So in the new budget, we'll get everybody new iPads, and then every 3 years, we'll continue to update that. Similar to, staff computers and devices. As those become obsolete and get older, we'll work with CompuNet to make sure they're on a nice rotation, to make sure they're upgraded, updated, staff have what they need, as well as council. We are also looking at enhancing some of our communication formats in this room. So when folks are watching our meeting recordings or they're watching it on live stream, it's a little easier for them, more accessible. So looking at some closed captioning options. And then also looking to add a different sort of feed in here. So right now, if someone's watching this, they're only seeing me or they're only seeing the dais. What we'd like to do is make it so they can see both sides at once. It's a dual camera view. You can see the presentation. That way, when we're having a back and forth conversation, or if we ever do like a round table discussion down here, we can actually utilize this room a little more with that kind of dual camera view. It makes it easier for folks to watch and follow what's going on during the meetings. We recently increased bandwidth in Town Hall. We'll continue to monitor this, and if we need more as we continue to grow, we'll revisit that. And Mike mentioned the IT person, so I won't go into that. On the communication side, we'd like to include some additional resources for 3 to 4 professional, bigger videos throughout the year, in addition to the lives, Facebook Lives and other videos we produce in-house. We're definitely going to a more visual society. People want those, they don't want to sit and read it, they want to watch it, listen to it, and, we'll have to get there as well. And then include additional resources for a little more digital advertising to reach a larger audience. We've been doing more of that the last year, and it does really seem to increase engagement and our reach when we do that. Couple things I would like to note, that couple projects that we started this budget year that will come to fruition in the next budget year. And that includes internet at our parks. Hopefully that will actually be, early summer when that actually kicks off, but depending on supply chain issues and other things, might dip into later summer. And then upgrades to the Shirley Howe Room. That was approved in this year's budget, and we are working on that, but I think the stuff is sitting in the ocean somewhere right now, waiting on it to get here. So we're looking at probably a July for that installation and up and running for that. So I'll be happy to answer any questions. Yes, sir.
When it comes to cell phones and tablets, is there any way we can have an option to go to Android as individual?
Yeah, I can work with Verizon on that, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else? Thank you, Abby.
You're welcome.
I do have a question, actually. Can I ask a
Okay,
question?
sure.
Abby, yeah, quick question for you. Mike, as we talked, you were mentioning we have this IT person that we're going to bring on staff. We know Mrs. Ball, right? Mrs. Ball has been here, and she's been the IT, communications, you name it. She's been doing this, which is she's been doing a really good job. But as this new person is coming on board from a IT standpoint, would things such as the iPads, the phones, and so forth, would these things transition to this new person?
Right.
That's the intent?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, good.
And you would see Miss Ball do backflips once that happens.
I would imagine, right?
Yeah.
Ms. Ball, thank you very much. You've been really great at, kind of holding on the fort, but, yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Abby, for all you do. You're marvelous.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
You're
Wonderful. I managed a town where we had to build an IT department from scratch. And when you look back on it after you've done it for several years, it was one of the best decisions you've ever made, because that way you can stay up on the cutting edge and you can get things done a whole lot more quickly than before. So,
very good.
Thank you.
okay.
Time in band camp.
I guess we'll move to to planning.
Miss Deese, yes.
Hi, good morning. Originally, planning did not have any intent to ask for any additional funding other than what you graciously give us, but we did catch wind of the possibility of council being interested in updating the downtown master plan. So I brought with me today just to show you what we have currently. The previous format that was done in 2005, I'm guessing that there were some budget limitations, and so it's more of kind of a pamphlet style instead of, you would generally have a actual document with language, a bounded book perhaps. And so I think that this plan has really good bones. There's a lot of really good things in this plan, but some of it obviously is outdated, as this building is here today rather than in the middle of town center. So the planning staff would be very excited about that project and really taking what we're doing with the street, what's coming out of the ground with town center, what's going on over across the street, and really incorporating that and creating some requirements to have consistency. If you think about like street lights and trash cans and benches and that kind of thing. Most of the players that we have are they've bought into the vision, they're willing to do that. But eventually we'll run into a property owner that maybe doesn't want to play ball with us. And so we need that in our Unified Development Ordinance as a requirement, rather than just a part of the plan as a suggestion. So we spent some time over the last couple of weeks talking with different consulting firms that do this kind of work. and looking at what we have in place and what they think that we need, and we think that this is the desire of council and staff together, we're looking at a maximum of $150,000. So I was just going to drop that figure in on you and give you some time to think about that. And that's all that we have, unless there's questions.
Questions?
Just, we don't want to wait 17 years to come to a new resolution, or a new plan, if you will. We need to act on it, and I'm with you.
Thank you.
Todd?
I'm sorry, was the 150,000 creating another position, or?
No, sir. So the staff that we have currently that has the urban design experience, just to be frank, does not have time to do this, and so this would be contracted out, and that would enable us to have a scope of time in there so that we know exactly when it's going to be done, and if not, there would be a penalty for that.
Because I know we added a staff member to do the comprehensive plan, if I remember, and
We
so, yeah.
we did not fill that position, so I'm holding as tight as I can and trying to run as lean as we can. But that extra position has not been filled at this time. I'm trying to do my best to keep us as lean and efficient as we can.
Okay, well, I'm good with the 150K, so.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
Thank you.
One quick thing before you go.
Sure.
And I'm going to try to do this quickly. Brandy did something at the last meeting. I just wanted to give her a little bit of kudos, and I did tell her this, and I appreciate what town staff does and what people do here.
Thank you, sir.
But we had with the car lot thing that we had the other day, it was been very easy for you to just let that go, and we have a resident that couldn't do something that was really a good thing for him and his family, and you went the extra step, and I appreciate it. I wanted to thank you personally for helping people, and I think that's what makes our staff a good staff, is that you care about people, and you're not here, it's not a job that you come and get paid for. You care about what you do, and I appreciate what you did the other day. He appreciates what you did the other day. I haven't even spoken to him about it, but thank you for caring about your job, and I mean that with all the way down the line from Adam to Abby to Jim to everybody, Hayden, every person in this room, Kathy, town manager, Todd, every one of you. Thank you for caring about Indian Trail and it not just being an hourly job for you. So I'll get off my soapbox and we can move on, but thank.
And that Todd too, right?
I did say that, Todd. I was talking about that, Todd. Anyway, thanand thank you for all you do, and thank you for what you did the other day.
I appreciate you mentioning that. Thank you.
Very good. Okay. I'm going to tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to hand. I got to go to the bathroom because I got to go. I drank way too much coffee. Okay, let's take a 5-minute break. How? Right.
So engineering, Mr. Hunsinger.
Council Mayor, Engineering Department, we have 3 items we want to discuss with you today. One is, as you saw, as far as the funding is, y'all have elected to move forward with looking at Indian Trail Road Extension, is what I'm calling it, which is the other 2 halves, other side of our EB 5931 Indian Trail Complete Street project. Y'all have designated around $2 million. I would like to go ahead, if you're all willing to go ahead and start the RFQ for the design for that project. The contract wouldn't start till this next FY, but go ahead and do the advertising because that's a long process. We have to you have to get a steering committee to do the scoring and all that. So it takes a couple months. I'm thinking around for that design is going to be around $400,000 to $500,000. And so anyway, we'd like to have consensus on that as far as moving forward with the advertising.
Tom?
Marcus? No, I'm saying yes.
Yeah, I'm saying yes too. I voted already.
Yeah. All right, just want to make sure. All right, so next thing is, we have another greenway we'd like to start looking at called the Price Mill Creek Greenway, which, if you don't know, the Old Mill Road widening project is installing a 10-foot multi-use path through Old Mill Road. Well, that is part of the Carolina Thread Trail, and it extends all the way into Stallings, back into Mecklenburg County, and that's part of that connection, where the Price Mill Creek Greenway would be all the way down to the end of town limits where Sheridan and the new Heritage subdivisions at. Can go through the Duke Energy right-of-way all the way up to Old Mill Road. So you'd be going through Sheridan Heritage, Taylor Glen, and Brandon Oaks Park, Brandon Oaks. So that project has been in a prioritization as far as CRTPO to get funding for, but obviously, like any other project, it's just been stagnant for several years now. I'm going to still try to submit to that project to get funded, but I would like to go ahead and do the design because we could do the design in-house, and really all we would have to do is do the surveying, and that's what y'all would have to pay for pretty much. And I think the surveying would only cost about $50,000 for that whole stretch of area. So if y'all would give us a consensus on moving forward with that, I would appreciate it.
Raise your hand.
Excuse me, are we moving forward on the design or the cost of the
Design,
survey?
just the design.
Just the design, thank you.
It's just the in-house design, and we just have to pay for the survey. So I appreciate that. And then the last thing is, y'all mentioned stuff about the residents talked about, transportation improvements around town and stuff. And there's a lot of projects. We're very fortunate that DOT and ourselves are doing a lot of improvements. But to start looking at, or again, like the stormwater thing, being a little bit more proactive and trying to look to see where the problems are going to be in the future, there is a potential to do a study town-wide. Now, I can go after money through the discretionary fund with CRTPO this fall, try to get some planning dollars for that, which I will certainly do, but for some reason we don't get to do that. I think it's a good opportunity to go ahead and start doing a study, because they're always going to have discretionary funds available. Well, I don't want to say that. Eventually, they're going to run out. But this fall, they'll have one, and they'll probably have one next spring. But unfortunately, to get a project started, you have to get in prioritization, which won't start till July 2023. Well, there's no guarantee you're going to get a project selected, and if it's not already in the STIP or in a MPO metropolitan plan, it's very hard to get it back in there. And they've already about to approve the 2050 plan right now. So you'll be waiting another 4 years to try to get a project into that plan. So what I want to do is I want to move forward with trying to get some planning dollars, but if we don't get that, I would like to move forward with the study to at least we can maybe get a potential, maybe it's an intersection improvement project, I don't know. We can at least get that looked at, get a cost for, and be able to do an application to try to get it into prioritization 7 in 2023. Now it'll be July 2023. And again, that's a 6 months process. So even if you're starting that process, you won't know if you get a project selected till 2024. So again, it's a long process. So I may come back to y'all. I don't need to tell you that right now, but I may come back to y'all maybe middle of next FY and ask for the $70,000 to $100,000 for a study. But just wanted to give you a heads up on that. Not asking for that now, but it may potentially happen. That's all I have as far as the engineering department.
Yes.
Yeah.
Is it possible for us to sort of try and get the Wesley Chapel Stouts Road from the Lowe's down to Rogers Road, sort of from a cost perspective, if the railroad bridge, the railroad overpass is going to be built, we know with federal dollars.
Right.
But is there a way we can kind of try and get that in there as we go ahead with some of the capital improvement plans, to have that on there so we can get it submitted for prioritization? We know it's going to take a while. It's probably not going to, if it ever gets approved, it's probably not going to be till 2025, 26, it even gets started. But is there a way we can kind of make that visible? Because we have a lot of these other ones that we're working on. Indian Trail Road, Chestnut phases 1 and phases 2 and 3 here. Is that something else that we can look at as well in terms of as we look forward? Maybe not this budget year, but as we look forward, we have that cost in our mind. I know it was mentioned at $37 or $39 million, but is there a way we can sort of start bringing that up to the surface so we can start getting it into the call for projects and hopefully get it approved or funded or on the radar again?
Yeah, I've kind of looked into that because of the overpass. Obviously, if they're going to do that, to me that project should come right after that. Unfortunately, that's not the overpass construction project doesn't help the ranking of the rest of the project. And unfortunately, even if you throw money at it, it will not bring that score up maybe a point or two. And that's the unfortunate thing. And if it's $38 million, you're going to throw $7 million at it. And if if you're not right at the bubble, like say they take the top 20 and you're not at 21, there's no reason to throw money at it. So, which is unfortunate because I myself and some DOT folks think that formula is should be more favorable to people wanting to put money on projects. And unfortunately, that formula just doesn't work that way. Maybe that changes in the future. I don't know. Yeah, I'd like to bring that up to y'all and to try to push forward because that's what I wanted to do. But unfortunately, it's just it's not feasible, not unless we want to build it ourselves. Which you're talking $38 million for that.
Todd, thank you for all you do. Good job, and see you soon. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
I guess that brings us, with taxes already done, I guess Parks and Recreation is that correct,
yes, sir.
Mr. Town
And
Manager?
while we're waiting, just a minute, Hayden, a couple comments on Todd's report. And he and I have had some discussions about where do we go from here after we've been surfacing roads and all of that. Where's the next element? And like he said, trying to do a traffic study, looking at where are our high hazardous intersections. And if you're going to be like any other growing city, you're going to find yourself where you're going to probably have to contribute to some DOT stuff just to get it done. And so because of our financial position, if we have a plan in place, we may come back several years down the road and, look at a bond issue or something like that to fund transportation. So I wanted to give you that. Hayden?
Good morning, everyone. I just want to briefly run through what we are looking at Park and Rec. As you know, we've kind of been hindered a lot over the last couple of years. A lot of things that we do bring a lot of people together all at once. So with decisions that were made by previous town management, coupled with the COVID pandemic, we are truly starting from scratch for a lot of our programming. A lot of that was dismantled, and then again, when you couldn't put anyone in a building, when town hall was closed, when there were gathering restrictions. So what we're looking to do is kind of get back to what hopefully will be normal again, and just a robust offering. So, with parks and facilities, currently there are no restrictions. Our building is open 7 days a week, almost 365 days a year. Fields and shelters are back open, and programs are queued up and again, highly attended at this point. We're seeing an increase in usage of the building, usage of all the amenities out of the park, as well as interest in new things coming down the pipeline. As it relates to programming, as we mentioned, back in 2019 was kind of that first time that we were seeing some things come off our plate. So we're adding all of those back on. Y'all should have received the recent program guide, and you should see something in there from 3-year-olds to 103-year-olds, art classes to STEM classes, summer camp to morning classes, evening classes, and anything in between. Our staff does a great job with coming up with new programs, whether it's an archery class, whether it's a cooking class. We also know our limitations. We don't teach Zumba very well. We don't teach yoga very well, but we have great contacts in the community that are able to do that. So we continue to work with those folks, finding avenues to bring recreational opportunities, whether it's at home, whether it's here in our building, or potentially at our park, or activating a space with other amenities. So truly excited for that. And then as you saw just, last Saturday across the street, those of you that were able to attend or see pictures, our events are back, and people continue to talk about them. So we had literally thousands of folks across the street last Saturday at Touch a Truck. I heard from, or I think it was a daycare that posted on our social media that said, all I heard about was touching trucks over the weekend, so that's cool. That means that, those events are living on. They're highly supported by the business community as well through sponsorship. And obviously when we have vendors out there, that's their livelihood. So, it's not just gathering people, but it's showcasing what we have. Those of you that attended the art show or may have poked your head in there, we had about 400 folks in the building on Thursday when we opened up. They're here for a positive thing. They're here to see their kids' artwork. One of the things that was identified by council was partnerships. So with that, we partnered with 10 of the local grade schools as well as a homeschool group. So again, showcasing what the building has. Our hope is that then again, that was some of the first times people were in the building. So now they know it's here. They know it's available for rent. They're more educated on our programs, and we should see them more often. So looking specifically into next year's budget, getting back to normal looks like adding a new full-time staff. This person will be the event coordinator. If you remember when I moved from the event coordinator, it was dubbed the Park and Rec manager. So then it was reclassified as the director. Currently still wear the hat as the event coordinator. I'm ready to take that hat off and pass it along to someone else. That does two things, I think, for the town. Give someone full ability, 35, 40 hours a week to focus on events 12 months out of the year. So while Touch a Truck was a fantastic event, it could have been better. While we do a great job exploring grants and opportunities and training, I can do a better job if some of that is taken off. So you will see a request for a new full-time employee. That will bring us back to staffing levels that were here in 2019. So obviously, we've all acknowledged that the town continues to grow, and what we're asking for is to bring up the staffing level to where council, town manager, mayor saw it appropriate back in 2019. Again, with that comes a little bit of dollars for programming and a little bit of dollars for events, as other folks have alluded to. Cost more, so when we're doing food at an event or the bounce house folks have to get there, they're paying their staff more, and we seize part of that as well. So we do generate revenue. We don't generate a profit, but again, that comes down to cost of living, or benefit of life, if you will, for choosing Indian Trail. So we take great pride in Indian Trail being one of the top 15 places to live, and think Park and Rec, plays a good portion and good part of that. So truly looking to, again, push what we have for amenities and rooms and programs to continue. Jim will be happy to hit our revenue goals, and then essentially, continue just to work with residents to make sure that they are prioritized with anything that we can do. Other than that, that's where Park and Rec stands. Any questions?
So we go back to having fireworks?
Yeah, so y'all actually, 2 meetings ago, I think, approved fireworks at the Family Fun Day. So
That's a yes.
Yes, that
Okay,
is a
good.
yes. So currently in the budget, that is the only show we are scheduled to shoot.
And the budget includes the powwow.
Yes.
We're working on that, and but you're asking for an increased position of an event coordinator, correct?
Correct.
I'm good with all that. Thank you.
Everybody else, just raise your hand if you're all, everybody's for it, so.
Perfect. Any other questions?
May I make some comments, Mr. Mayor?
Why, certainly.
All right. Couple things, Park and Rec related, is the RFQ for the work across the street has gone out. So we're waiting to get those responses. Once we have those, we'll bring it back to council and we'll get going on that. One of the challenges we're going to have across the street is, and will continue to be, parking. At the Touch a Truck last week, we heard that people parked all the way at Edna Love Park or Field and walked all the way down. So this is kind of a thing we're going to have to think about as a town. How do we increase the parking for our events? Yes, sir?
By the land design, we're having included more parking and
Yeah.
a field.
Yeah, I think it's like 40 or something
Yeah,
spaces,
so
but it's.
we're moving with that. Yeah,
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
As you look through the program guide, if there's some activities you think that you would like to see us explore that we're not offering, or that, some of the citizens tell you, please let us know, because we do want to have a inclusive type program. We're going to be bringing you, we are still in discussions with the powwow group, and you got a report a month or so ago, and we'll bring you an updated report probably within the next 30 days. So those are just the major things. Oh, the last thing I'll mention is, as we talk about the ARPA funds and the athletic associations, we'll be looking at how does the town and the athletic associations work on that.
Marcus?
Just remind me if I'm not mistaken, when this apartment complex was approved, there are additional parking spaces that was discussed and promised within that to enable more parking in town. Or
Correct.
at the fields, right?
Correct. So
while,
what you-
while, one second,
Yeah.
sorry. While we're also looking at that land design with the additional field and the additional parking spaces, that project itself should also bring some additional parking, especially along the Chestnut side. I think there was some design that was going to enable that. Am I correct?
Correct. So when the apartments were approved, Nelson Lemon will be going from one-way to two-way. And then what you'll see is slanted or horizontal parking, diagonal, thank you, Jim, as you see over at Crossing Pass Park. So you will lose the on-street, but you will gain that parking, so there is a net benefit there.
Thank you.
The land design is also looking at adding about 70 spots, again, looking to the pond to the right of that. Then we've also had some internal conversations. The town owns a little triangular piece of property on the other side of Nelson Lemon next to the apartment complexes, where we could use that for some staging equipment, and then again, potentially just have a stone lot for overflow, if you will.
Any other questions?
Okay.
Have we ever thought of, real quick, have we ever thought of, in this, of like a big golf cart that we could park somewhere, seriously, and drive people from parking lots here? And it wouldn't be near enough, I know, but.
Yeah, so
it would help.
we've actually utilized golf carts, 4 and 6 passenger golf carts to shuttle back and forth. When we had the opening of this building, when we did Fall Festival on this property, the issue is, in this general vicinity, and we saw this at Touch a Truck, everything was full by 10:15. This property, Spangler's very gracious, and we utilize that. Across the street, and when I point across the street, I mean Chestnut Square Park, Nelson Lemon, and Chestnut Parkway, as well as Crossing Pass. So when Town Manager McLaurin indicates that people were walking from Edna Love, yeah, I mean, one of our staff walked from the library, so which is a good problem. It means people are hearing about us. But yeah, parking is definitely a challenge.
Or I just, a golf cart would probably not be like a minibus, and I don't mean a big bus, but a minibus
Like
that where you can get.
Indian Trail Church, Baptist Church has that.
Yep. Yeah. So we've explored that.
Maybe 20 people. 20.
Yeah,
and that
absolutely.
Just rotates around, and that's just something that I know that would be expensive. Yes.
Well, one conversation, correct me if I'm wrong, Hayden, we've had a conversation about the shuttle buses and whether we could have some sort of partnership with Atrium Health as opposed to having to cross 74, but we haven't come to a conclusion on that.
Well, it might be something that we ought to think about and see what the council thinks about that, especially since parking is going to be a problem for a while,
But-
so. Yeah.
And
so
we
it would
show,
be nice if
yeah.
every 10 minutes or 8 minutes, somebody's probably not gonna help everybody, but it's gonna help a lot of people.
And we do shuttle for Family Fun Day, because again, we're looking at 10, 12, 15,000 people. And when we're occupying half of the parking lot out at Crooked Creek Park for rides, and then the other half for our staff and vendors and EMTs and fire trucks, there's like 30 spaces left. So we do shuttle there. This property doesn't offer, or this general part of town doesn't offer a large vacant lot anywhere that doesn't introduce something, meaning like we could work with First Baptist, but then you're constantly crossing 74, in some sort of vehicle all day long. You could park at Indian Trail Elementary School, but then you're dealing with Indian Trail Road and there aren't that many spaces there. You could park down here at the college, but now you're going out of the county. But yeah, it's a good problem to have. I know park and rec directors that are struggling to get people at events. So I'd rather deal with this problem, have too many people. But yeah, absolutely, we're exploring all options. Shuttling is staffing and cost.
Gotcha.
Question, I understand that the Shady Bluff Road is going to be completely funded by outside money coming in. And so if you have an area right over there next to it, like that gravel lot you're talking about, is there any way to incorporate that in at the same time you're doing a Shady Bluff Road? And can the funds be put into it? Do you go ahead and asphalt it, and stripe it?
There is a concept out there that was done during the apartments approval process that obviously didn't happen because they were broken phases. So we have it appears based on their design, you can stick about 40 parking places in that triangle area that Hayden was talking about. So we could definitely build that with that project if y'all so choose to, but obviously the price goes up.
And you're just talking 40 parking places, so that's not really gonna alleviate a problem.
Well, it'll help, but
it'll help, yeah.
Better than zero, but not as good as 4,000.
If you're going to be out there paving and doing a road,
yeah,
it can't be that much more.
So if I can ask this then, we have the land design to the right of the pond, there's 70 spaces. We have this potential triangle with 40 spaces, that's 110. I think it's something we should look at as well because, you need more, and we're limited in what we can do, but I think these are things that we can do. Is there a way, Mr. Hunsinger, to sort of explore that from a cost standpoint before you come back to the next budget process, or you just want to just table that and leave that alone? Here's the other concern that I have. If we do build it, the apartments, I don't know when they're slated to finish, but then it can be something that's built for apartment parking or for construction parking. You get what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. It has to be town first, town only, town events, that type of thing. That's the key concern that I have.
Marcus, I've heard stories about the field over there where we were talking about building a parking lot and a soccer field or whatever, or some sort of field. Why can't that just be all parking instead of a soccer field? Do we necessarily need that soccer field? You know what I mean? Why can't we, I don't know how many parking spaces that would come to. I get that I'm for sports also. However, for the need of the town and for the events that, that we're seeing, the people who are arriving to them, that would make a huge impact on parking.
But the thing is, we have very limited land in town.
Sure.
And, we have a need. We went from 2 fields to 1. We went down. So it's something that to not put a field and put parking, that's not a position that I would support.
I'm just thinking, that
no, I understand.
Solve our issue.
Yeah, but
I think it would help tremendously.
It solves one issue, but it gives you another one.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't want to, Mr. Mayor, I don't want to go too far down the greenway, if you will. Land Design did the concept across the street. We now are doing an RFQ for people to do the design work. It may be Land Design gets that work. It may be something else. But the message we're getting from the council loud and clear is you want to be able to balance soccer fields and parking, and we'll certainly look at how do we maximize that to the benefit of the town.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, You know, and just one other quick comment about that is, on the soccer field, first of all, it's a half field, so it's not that big. It's not that, you don't create that many parking places. But also, you gotta remember too, that parking's only a problem, how many times a year?
5 times a year.
Yeah,
maybe.
4 or 5 times a year, where that soccer field may be utilized 70, 80 times, I don't know, or 100 times or whatever. So all this, as the town manager says, we can work out later. You do a fantastic job. Thank you for all you do and all the events, and appreciate you coming up and filling our ear full of stuff to think about. So if there's no other questions, we'll move on to
Thank you.
Public Works.
Well, I'm going to kind of do what I think Hayden and Abby both did. I'm going to kind of give a little bit of background on just Public Works, just so everybody kind of understands what we do and then what staff we have now, and then roll into next year's budget. So Public Works, we do building and grounds maintenance. We do streets and sidewalk maintenance, so anything inside of the right-of-way on town streets. We also do solid waste is through our department. We have stormwater maintenance, so that's catch basins, creeks, things like that. Not the capital projects, those usually run through engineering through Todd, but all the maintenance level stuff. And then also park maintenance, so all the field maintenance, upkeep, things like that run through Public Works. Right now we have an actual staff in the building of 2 people. We have 13 people in the field, and we have 3 open positions right now. Last year, council adopted a surplus policy, I can speak, for vehicles. We are working through that policy, so we will in the next week or so be surplusing 4 or 5 vehicles and some other pieces of equipment. We also last year, in last year's budget, we started a work order system. This was a big deal. It was a pretty expensive thing for the town to take on, but we've gotten dividends back from it. So right now, in 10 months, we've had 600, and I looked these numbers up this morning, so we've had 665 total requests in 10 months. Of those, 449 have been completed. Now, that could be completed in that somebody needed a new trash can, and we just rolled that through. So that's a 10-minute request. That's not a very long request, or that could be, I have a pothole on Brandon Oaks Parkway, and we go out and patch it. Or I have a sidewalk that's coming up, and I need that fixed. So it could be any level across that area. With the open work orders that we have in the system today, if I had to guess, we have over a year's worth of open work orders today. That's if nobody else put anything else in the system, we have at least a year's worth of work. So that means if you called me today and asked me to do something, depending on what it is, it could be a year before somebody came to your property to actually do it. I'll pick on Brandy's comment a while ago. We have always been and always have been from a town, as council member, as Mayor Cohen said. I've said council member a lot. As long as we've been here, we've been lean and mean. So going into next year's budget, I would ask for another full-time position. That'll bring us up to is 4 4-man crews in the field. So that's a 4-man crew for buildings and grounds. That crew maintains this building. They maintain the grounds out front. They also maintain the cemetery and all the out parcels that the town has and maintains. Then we would have a 4-man crew that we have, this is just kind of giving you some information, that maintains our parks. So any parkland, that crew maintains that parkland, a 4-man crew. And then if we fill our open positions that we have right now, we would have 2 4-man crews that would do all of those roadway, stormwater, all those other projects. One thing with having everybody under one roof of Public Works allows us to move people back and forth as well. So there will be plenty of times that if we have a very big project, we'll pull somebody from streets and buildings, or we'll pull somebody from park and rec, or go the other way to help out to get things done. We will be looking at next year's budget as we continue to take on new roads. Our guys still put out asphalt with a shovel out of the back of a truck. We don't have a paver. Just last year, we finally got a milling machine. So we need to actually move, well, year before last, but we need to move up in the width of what we're able to mill, and then we would be looking for a small, it's called a trail paver, but it would allow us to pave about a 4-foot swatch of, if we mill it up, to pave that back with a small paving machine. And then just vehicle replacement as we continue to work through our policy. We'll be looking need a new field mower, and that's just as we update our, park maintenance. You just have to roll those pieces of equipment through. The biggest thing that I want to make y'all aware of, and we told you this and everybody knew this, when we sign a new solid waste contract, I'm estimating right now that the budget for solid waste will be $1 million more next year than what it was this year. So we were roughly 2.5. We're roughly going to be, give or take, 3.5 next year for solid waste, and that's for the same level of service. Gas is up. Everybody knows that. Todd's already mentioned supplies and construction equipment's up. We're going to add some money to the budget. Talking with Mike about this building now is 5 years old. It's hard to think that this building is that old already, but if you walk through some of the areas that we've had a lot of people in, Hayden brings 400 people here in the building, walls start to get dented, paint starts to get scuffed. You just need to bring those things back up, so we have some of those things that we need to start doing now. And then the last thing I'll mention is what y'all have already mentioned, and I appreciate it, is a public works facility. Those guys work every day out of a shop they built themselves that has no heat, has no air, and has no running bathroom. So, I appreciate it. Questions?
Questions?
Marcus? I know we've mentioned the public works. We started work on acquisition of the land through the surplus process with NCDOT. Do you have any estimations or plans that the council can get so we can have the concept of the cost, even if it's something where it's scalable, right? We build it to a certain size and then we can increase it and so forth. Because the thing is, as you do mention, we need a public works building. I'm going to agree with you that we do, right? The town our size and, seeing that we're going to get, we're growing, people are still building houses, moving here and so forth. And our, the things that we do is going to keep increasing. For us to prepare for that, is that something that Kent and Mike, Adam, we can put on the CIP in terms of, where do we go? Do we have, are you asking for $50,000 or $100,000 for design of a public works building? I know it may depend on the land that we get, whether it's that surplus property or somewhere else. But can we get some of that kind of going so therefore we, this council is aware of the cost and we can start sort of prioritizing funds for that, where we go and how we go about doing that?
So I think Mike had sent out an email to everybody this week about, we had finally heard back from DOT about the surplus property and the process. A little bit of miscommunication, I think, between us and them. We thought they were moving and they weren't moving as much as we thought they were. But to answer the question, we're going to work internally. Like Todd said, they can do some design work internally. We're going to work with them to do a conceptual design of that property. So that'll be an internal thing. We'll be able to give rough rectangles and squares and circles and things like that. And then as we roll through that process, if we start to feel that we are definitely going to be surplus to that property, because we don't know yet if that's going to happen, if we get to that point that we really feel like that's going to happen, then we would come back and say, let's go ahead and shoot and do design. And then we could get a hard number for what it would cost.
But even if it's not a hard number, but if it's something in the ballpark, right? Because we know, the cost of things is going to increase as we go forward from where we are right now. But it also gives us the view of prioritizing. Do we want to set monies aside? If it's a 3-year process, can we do it, build it over 3 years, or can we put money aside, into a separate fund to go ahead and do that? In other words, what I wouldn't want is that next year you come and say, hey, it's $3 million, whereas this year we could have started planning for it, especially with some of the funding mechanisms that we have available for us as a town. That's just what I was kind of asking for.
100%. We can definitely start putting round numbers together, just so we know. I can tell you it's more than $3 million.
Well, I just threw out a number,
I
but,
know. I know what Mint Hill just paid or is going to pay for their new facility.
yeah, but they're in
so-
Mecklenburg, we're in Union, we're different.
Todd?
Jim, we've already been preparing for this $1 million. Is he over there? I can't see.
He is.
We've already been, my understanding, last budget and all that, we've been preparing for this $1 million increase in the trash services, correct? Okay, so I just, since you brought it up, I just want the public and everybody to be aware that we've been preparing for this, even though it's a big increase, that there'll be no need to, we'll be able to balance the budget and no need to increase taxes or anything like that. We've been preparing for this, and it's, thank you, Jim, and everybody that did that. I mean, so this has been, we're going to absorb that real well. You're asking for another full-time employee, a paver, and then equipment as needed, vehicle mower within standard operating
It's just
procedure,
standard
correct?
stuff, yeah.
Yeah.
The,
I'm good.
the biggest change is, the person, and do we want to start getting into paving, which I think from Todd's statement.
I was trying to agree with
Oh,
you. You know, I'm okay with it, man.
Okay.
Yeah, that's all right. Yeah, what you're asking for, I think is reasonable and needed, and I'm good. So, you know, looks like he's good too. He raised his hand. So.
Question, I know that we talked about paving some of these walking areas, the trails. Would this paver be related to that, or is this something that's strictly highway?
No, this paver could be used on something like that. We've started having some internal conversations. You have to remember, when we pull off our public works crews to do projects on other town property, which we always do, which, I mean, our crew built the Affinity Trail going up to the other building. Like, we put all that in. If we pull off and do that, that's about a month. The Affinity Trail took us about a month to do. So that's a month of time where we don't patch any potholes, we don't fix any sidewalks, we don't do any stormwater projects. So there's that balancing effect that we have to kind of do. But yes, if the trails were put in and then we needed to patch something, we could go patch it. Or we just have to start kind of balancing that. How often do we pull our crews?
I just wondered about the size of the piece of equipment, and if, you know, there's walking trails, I don't know how wide they are and how wide you need to make the trail, but I just wondered if that would fit in with that project.
Yes.
Help out.
To answer the question, yes.
Tom?
Yeah, isn't there somewhere, I mean, there's probably some facility around Indian Trail that's a vacant that we could get you guys out of the elements temporarily. You know, I don't know if the town would purchase a building or rent a place to where you guys could work out of instead of your makeshift shack. You know, is that something we thought about looking into perhaps? I think we could probably find a house or something, you know what I mean? Where you guys could have a temporary place. I know you need facilities for your equipment and so forth. You know, they've got those metal buildings that don't cost too much, and they put like these development places are doing, you know, where there's a metal building and they put brick around it, you know, something like that. If we thought about something like that, or are we going something like this? You know what I mean? Not as elegant, you know, elegant as this, but you get what I'm saying, Mike? We probably should
Yes,
look
sir.
into some place where they can park their stuff and gate it or whatever.
The short answer is we have not.
Mhm.
We are certainly receptive at looking at that, and I think that's probably a good way to go. One of the things we would have to look at is the zoning and the availability of a building. I would think that we
Find
would
it.
probably do some sort of short-term lease.
Mhm.
The state has told us that the surplus property thing will not be a quick process.
Well, that's why I was thinking,
But-
you know, I mean, why wait 3 to 5 years where we can get these guys out of the elements and they could have some heat and a bathroom? Brandy?
I can go ahead and tell you the availability of an industrial property is extremely hard to find, and Adam and I have talked about this. The work that he does is a little messy, so zoning does come into play as to where it's allowed, but then just the availability.
Right, I understand that, the park over there off of 74 by that new car wash there, I believe that it's looking for tenants. And they've got people, you know, plumbers that make a mess and people, roofers that drop tar on the ground, whatever, you know what I'm saying?
That's heavy industrial.
Yeah, we need to look somewhere like that. I mean, I'm sure we could look into it, and that'll just appease the situation for the next 3 years or 4 years, whatever it may be.
I don't want to make it sound like they don't have anywhere that doesn't have heat or air. I mean,
Well, you know what I'm saying.
They work out of some of them work out of the back of the building that the sheriff's department has most of.
Right.
And that does have heat and air and a bathroom. But then the two shops that they primarily work out of don't
Plywood,
have.
huh?
They're metal buildings. I
Yeah.
mean, they're metal, framed buildings.
Well, I mean, it's something we could look into, Mike.
Yes.
And Adam has gone around and done some field trips of some other public works facilities. In my career, the whole public works field has changed greatly. It's much more technical. It's much more, it's just a whole different world, and we do need to give them adequate facilities to be able to shower, lockers, clean environment, training workspace, et cetera. So I appreciate that, and thank you.
Yes, sir.
I just have one thing. I know you want to bring one more person on.
Yep.
If you're a year behind doing, when you say what, quickly, you don't have to go into, what are you a year behind on? What kind of little projects or big projects or?
With that number, so when I give you those numbers, and if anybody wrote those down, you're probably going, man, that's 171 projects, I think is what it is. That's not really how many are open in the system right now. There's some projects that, for us, don't qualify. But if somebody submits a project, it goes into the system, and then if we say it doesn't qualify, it doesn't get tagged as a completed project. So right now, there's probably, give or take, 100 projects that are open. Again, those projects could be as small as, I know last week one got entered to hang a picture here in the building. That takes an hour to do, you know what I mean? But then there's other ones that there's.
It might take you a year to do that,
Yeah,
right?
that one, yeah.
That's just government award.
Right. So that one wouldn't take
Sorry,
that
guys.
long. But an example of, I know out in Clover Bend subdivision, there's a ditch that needs to be regraded. That project, if we were to go out there to do that project, it would probably take 2 weeks to fully regrade the ditch and to fully do everything.
Okay.
So there's the gamut across the board. So what, by having at least 2 crews allows us to do is you send people in different directions. You can do asphalt at the same time you're doing stormwater, and you can do just any number of things at the same time. I get where you're going. Like if you're that far behind, you need even more people than that.
That was, I mean, not that we're, prepared to do that, but, maybe we should prepare to do that because I don't want to be a year behind on things that people need.
And I don't either, and we've been worse than that. So we've actually caught up a little bit now. If you used to call and ask me when I would come out and do a stormwater maintenance project, so a catch basin repair or that stream or that drainage ditch or something like that, I would just tell you, I don't know. You're on the project list, and I have no clue when I'm.
Last question. How long does it take to go fix a pothole?
Average pothole would to actually do the work or to get out and fix it for somebody?
Yeah, fix it.
To schedule it, 2 to 3 weeks probably.
At one time, didn't we do that the next day? Or am I just dreaming that I thought that?
Are we prioritizing our
We do
stuff?
prioritize
Okay.
them. So if a pothole is on like Brandon Oaks Parkway, I'm going to have to jump on that a lot faster because traffic's moving a little bit faster on Brandon Oaks Parkway. Now that we maintain some bigger roadways, if something was to happen on Indian Trail Road, I'm probably going to have to do that tomorrow.
Okay.
Or
The only reason I asked is probably that's the most asked question out there, if I got a pothole, how long is it going to take?
And
to
it
get
may
fixed?
be longer than that. So if it's a very small pothole on a cul-de-sac, it may take longer for us to program it to actually get out there and do it.
So just so you can tell the public, if there's one on Poplar Road, people.
So Poplar
complain.
Road's not a town-maintained facility, so
Well,
we
that's
wouldn't
even a
patch
better
that
question.
pothole.
So how long does it take DOT to get out there to?
I can't speak for
3 years
them,
behind, huh?
as long as they want to.
And the only reason, I know, I don't mean to prolong this, but we get asked that, and that happens on Poplar Road. I mean, you get it all the time, and somebody in Annandale, you'll get them, and it becomes a big problem for everybody that lives over there, because there might be a big hole in the road, and they complain about it. I'm just trying to get an idea. I realize Poplar's a state-owned road, but I've seen the town go out there and fix that before, so.
We have fixed potholes that are on state-maintained roads.
Yeah.
Just because we've requested for them
Because
to
to
do
get
it
it
for
done.
6 months, and they never went out there, and finally, council or the manager or somebody tells me, look, I'm tired of waiting, just go fix it.
Right, okay, all right. Yes,
Mr. Mayor, 2 points. If it is a state road, we will tell the person to call the state, but we will also call the state ourselves. We don't want to pass the buck. Adam is right. Sometimes they just don't get out there, and it's easier for me to ask Adam to send his folks. Third point is one of the reasons we put the work order system in is so we could start to develop a database as to the type of calls we're getting, and then start to develop some accountability or some productivity factors as to how long it takes to get things repaired, and then hopefully start to put some goals in place that we want to say repair 90% of something in a certain reasonable period of time.
okay, all right. Well, thank you.
But I want to add to your question earlier. One thing I can say is, as something that we've looked at is how big do we think we'll be in the next 5 years? We've kind of started to look at that from a public works perspective to see how many crews we might need to continue to keep up with as people move here, as we take over more roads. When I started here 17 years ago, the biggest project that we had ever done was a patching contract for $30,000. Now we build a $10 million building, so.
And we maintain, oh,
McIntyre? He's done, he's asked too many already. Another one, go ahead, Marks.
Well, I've had my hand up. You don't look my way, but it's okay.
I try not to. I mean, my God.
That's because he's looking to the right.
Yeah.
We just ought to give you a microphone and let you just ask questions.
I would hope so. Adam, you've mentioned you have 3 positions open, you're asking for a 4th one. I'm okay with that, right? But are the 3 open positions, are they through attrition, or you just have not been able to fill them? The reason I'm asking that question is more or less around the current labor market.
Mm-hmm.
If you are the 4th one to get 4 crews out there, which, to make sure you get caught up and respond to the citizens' requests, have you had a lot of difficulty in filling those? Has it been a long time?
Yep. So some is through nutrition and some is through open new positions. So January 1st of this year, we had 2 new positions open up that were in this year's budget.
Okay.
But I will say that right now we're probably running, it takes us probably 6 months to fill an open position. So if somebody steps off and moves somewhere, takes a different job, something like that, it takes a long time to hire somebody. I've reached out to other public works directors. Matthew's down several people. Mint Hill is. The worst one that I've heard yet is Burlington, which they're a little bit bigger department than us. They're down 20 people right now. That's a lot of people. I mean, so it's the labor market. It's just hard to get people for that level of work.
Thank you, Adam. Thank you for
Sure.
all you do. You do a wonderful job. You're fantastic.
one thing I was going to mention is we now maintain over 80 miles of streets. And as we continue to grow, that number will continue to get larger. So,
Mr. Town Manager, are you done with this, or we want
yes,
to?
well, it's now the sheriff's office.
Well, I knew that. We was going to move
Yeah,
the sheriff's
okay.
office, but because I just heard Kevin holler at his wife and say that if we ask another question, he's going to arrest somebody. He's tired of sitting and waiting. Are you on there, Captain James?
Yes, sir, I am.
I bet you've been waiting eagerly, so the floor is yours.
Well, I'm going to tell you what. The sunshine just came out for the first time down here since I've been here, so I've been steadily listening to y'all. So, good morning, Mr. Mayor and Council. I'm going to try to get through this very quickly and just kind of give you an overview. But the first thing I want to tell you was thank you, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak to y'all, and I hate that I'm not there. Initially, we set this up on priorities, and through conversations with the sheriff and my boss, Chief Underwood, I wanted to give you a little bit of background about what's coming this year for us, and that's the opening of our new building there in Wingate. In that new building, part of what we're getting is in the development of a new lab. We're already doing fingerprinting, and what I mean by that, with our crime scene folks, doing fingerprint and fingerprint reading, matching fingerprints to crimes. Our crime scene techs and what they're doing is not only identifying suspects for us, but they're also solving those crimes. They're giving a higher solvability rates to our crimes that we're responding to. Some of you know already that the sheriff has been adamant about staffing a crime scene officer, or which that position is actually a civilian position. But having those, we refer to them as crime scene officers, and having those crime scene officers there in Indian Trail. Our first priority this year, with that new lab coming and some of the technology that's going to be bringing with it, is bringing a full-time crime scene officer on for Indian Trail. We've already seen the results and what we can get, having that initial response of that officer showing up with our patrol officers on scene, and whether that's to collect evidence or video or whatnot. But we're seeing a distinct solvability factor come in to helping close these crimes out. In saying that, usually, currently, our crime scene officers there a couple hours a day, usually early in the morning. But if something happens after those morning hours, we're relying on a response. If we can get a response of it coming out of Wingate with those resources from down there. But having and adding the staff person to have them there in Indian Trail would be a big clue for us. I'll be glad to answer any questions for you if I can.
Is that it? Any questions for Captain James?
Is that the whole presentation?
I don't know. Is that your whole presentation, Captain James?
No, that's just on the crime scene officer.
Oh, just crime scene. Okay, I'm sorry. Any questions on the crime scene officer?
No, sir.
Now, let me ask you this, Captain James. You said you had one that, for a couple of hours a day. Is that actually out of Indian Trail, or or did you explain this? Does that come out of the headquarters up in Wingate?
No, we usually have them, what we're doing, the sheriff has been adamant through the years about having somebody there on a daily basis. Now, depending on what's going on in the rest of the county, I can assure you that we usually have them a couple hours a day. And what that is that he's there to bring or to collect evidence that officers have brought in from crimes that they've investigated here at the Indian Trail office, and then to deliver it to Wingate, to our evidence custodian. Or he's being called, or she is being called into Indian Trail to actually investigate a crime or to help him with the investigation of a crime. But no, they're staffed primarily out of Wingate. This new one would be primarily staffed out of Indian Trail.
Gotcha. So you're just saying you want to bring somebody to do it full-time in Indian Trail, or is that basically what you're saying?
Yeah, it'd be a full-time position for Indian Trail.
And I'm assuming he'd be doing other things too, correct? Than just that. I mean, he'd only be doing that when, of course, there's a crime scene. Makes sense, doesn't it? Kind of answered my question. But, yeah, so he'd do, go ahead.
Yes, they constantly have stuff going on, whether it's, when we talk about responding to a scene, when they collect the evidence, we're talking about hours after that for them, to actually, what I call booking evidence, and then collecting, labeling, and then submitting. And depending on the level of the crime or whatever, you may have, anywhere from 4 to 8 hours after they leave a crime scene and what they have in paperwork to actually close that crime up.
Well, here's my last question. Would he be just working the crime scenes in Indian Trail, or is he going to be working crime scenes in other parts of the county?
Primarily, he's going to be assigned to Indian Trail and be responsible for Indian Trail. But you know as well as I do, if something major happens out in the county, just like if it was to happen in Indian Trail, and they requested that resource to assist, we're going to try to help them out any way we can.
I understand. Okay. Any other questions about that?
Nope.
No. Okay. No more questions on that.
All right. My second request is for another detective position. Ron Montecalvo was the new detective we got a year before last, that has come in and worked like a champ. We're still seeing about the number of cases that are being assigned to the Detective Bureau as a whole. The town of Indian Trail is generating 30% of the total assigned cases that's going to those detectives. Last year, for instance, and these numbers come from short of November, not including December of last year, there were 357 reports last year that were assigned to detectives. Monty, or Detective Monty Calvo, was assigned roughly 86% of those, 85%. We're just trying to get him some help. The sheriff is still providing 2 other detectives. We have a total of 3 that work the town of Indian Trail in those cases. But not only have we seen these crimes being solved faster, being solved, period, because we're having those detectives to show up on scene with our officers at the primary call. The quicker they can get their hands on the case and start running leads, we're seeing that the solvability factor goes way up. So adding that second detective in Indian Trail would be a huge help in caseload and trying to prevent Ron from carrying so much on his plate, so to speak.
Okay, any questions on that? Okay, no questions, Captain James.
Okay, my third request is for 1 patrol deputy. And this patrol deputy is going to be acting in a multitude of fashions. He's going to reinforce our Community Resources Bureau, which currently consists of Deputy Leslie Brett and Deputy Mike Henry, who are working with the HOAs every day and doing our programs in the community and working hand in hand with Mr. Kramer with Parks and Rec. But also, this officer is going to be primarily responsible for daytime crash investigation. As y'all see from month to month, when I give you the numbers, we're reducing the number of injuries, but the crashes aren't reducing. And a lot of that comes from these parking lot wrecks that sometimes take an hour and a half out of my patrol guys' day, where they're not able to be seen in the community. And one of the big things, a priority of mine when I came to Indian Trail, was the visibility in the communities and trying to focus on that crime rate. And we're seeing that crime rate reduction by the visibility and making sure that, not only are we getting our officers out of the cars, but we're getting them out of the main byways and highways. We're actually getting them in the communities and talking to people and creating those partnerships with these communities where, when we pull in, they're willing to come to us and talk to us. Adding this position is going to only help our patrol guys kind of take some of that off their plate, and this officer will be, responsible for answering those daytime crashes.
Any questions? Okay, Todd?
So what I've got is here is, you want to add a crime scene officer, investigator / detective, and another deputy. Being a top 15 place to live, I know public safety and what your department does is a big factor in that. And I'm a big believer in, officers in the community help deter crime, and we've got a low crime rate, and I appreciate the job y'all do. That's a testament to the sheriff's office and what you're doing and your team. So I think the request is extremely reasonable. I know we've got the money in the budget, so I think in order to keep where we're at on public safety and the community, I know the citizens would be for this, so I'm for it. Just want to let you know. Thank you, Captain James.
I do have a question.
Thank you.
Yeah, we have a question. Tom?
Hey, Captain James, this is Tom. You said an investigator, a detective, and a patrolman, correct? That's not one and the same as the investigator or detective, that you need three different individuals?
crime scene officer.
That's correct. It's 3 different positions.
3 different positions. Okay, I'm wonderful. Thank you.
All right, I have a couple questions, if you don't mind. So you're asking for 3 people for the coming year? Is that what we're doing, the coming budget year? Approximately, and I have forgot, is it like $110,000 per deputy or per, am I correct to say that? Or do you know right off the top of your head?
You're in the ballpark. Jim can tell you a whole lot better than I can because I'm not the math guru when it comes to amortization and how all that works.
Do you remember, Jim? Well, I tell you what, Jim, we're in the ballpark. Well, come back, Jim. No, he's gone. Okay, I was just curious. So, you know, and so we'll know. We're talking, could be as much as $350,000, I guess, added to that. And I'm just curious. Last year we added how many new deputies? 2, 3?
We added 3 deputies and 1 civilian personnel for administrative assistant to do the fingerprinting, in-house fingerprinting.
That's right. I remember that. So that's 4 and 7. So I just want to make that, and I know we need it, and you guys do a great job. I'm not saying, I'm just looking at all the things that we've talked about here today and things that we need, and just, you know, our budget seems to be expanding quite a bit. You know, so if you say we need it, then of course I'm not a voting person on it, but you know, you say we need it. Any other comment?
Yeah, I got one. Adam, did I hear it from you that Indian Trail grows 20 people a month, basically? Is that right? Our population grows?
So, we add roughly 20, right now, we're adding 20 new households a month. So if
maybe it could be a potential 80 to 100 people. So
because most of our households, yeah.
I don't see his request unrealistic, and I think it's for public safety. I think that's a valued purchase, if you will, investment. Thank you.
Any other comments? Mr. McIntyre?
No, sir.
Okay, you had your hand raised. Okay, Kevin, do you have anything else?
No, sir. I appreciate the opportunity, and thank you for the work that y'all do.
Okay, well, appreciate you being here and staying with us and doing your thing today, and keep up the good work. So, with that being said, Mr. Town Manager?
Yeah, just a few last-minute comments as we start to wrap up. I appreciate the board's participation today. One of the things I opened up with was we wanted to hear from the board, the council, as to what they wanted to see or not see. So I want to make sure that everyone has had that opportunity to offer any comments, suggestions, consideration, etc. We also have some follow-up information that we'll be working on and bringing back to you. As you have seen, I think, both spoken and unspoken, as the town is growing, we're going to have to grow personnel, and so to make that happen. Now, where do we go moving forward? We will have our second of 2 meetings on April 2nd. We don't envision that meeting will last 4 hours. We think it will be much more brief. We will have numbers for you to look at and comment on. On May 3rd, I will send you the proposed budget. Under the way we operate in North Carolina, it's the manager's recommended budget, and then y'all do with it what you will. It will be formally presented to the town council at your May 10th meeting as information. You'll schedule a public hearing on May 24th, and the plan is that the budget get approved on June 14th. That gives Jim 2 weeks to gear up his new numbers, his new accounts, so we start July 1st ready to go. Does anybody have any questions? Mr. Mayor, that's all that I have. Thank you for the kind words for the staff.
I think y'all did a very good job of answering the questions before we had them. So thank you for your hard work, and thank you, everybody, for showing up today and being here and doing such a fine job. You did great, all of you. So thank you. So does that bring us down to the discussion of the basically the town attorney?
The only thing we will add to that is we will be moving that date to the 22nd. I know as of late Friday afternoon, we've heard from 2 of the 3 firms that are available. We will provide you some guide points that you might want to consider when you meet with these folks. Each of the 3 firms, I think, can do the job and do it well. But fortunately, you have one small, one medium, one large firm.
And one last thing, Tom, did you mention that April 2nd might not be a good time for you, or did I?
No, that was Marcus.
That was Marcus.
Yeah. He's going to be out of town.
I'm going to be out of town. I'm going to be unavailable. The reason I was asking that is for those staff members who have spring break in Union County. I think spring break is the 15th of April. So if the meeting could be considered to move to the 9th, that would be good. If it cannot be moved, then I would miss, and I would ask to be excused. But
Well, and let me just say this. I think we went through the meat of it today, right? I mean, the meat of what we're doing, and kind of agreed on whatever we've done. So you've been to these before, and I don't know if we could move it anyway, but if, something we want to talk about, or probably not. But what I'm saying is, Marcus, maybe you don't need to be here, and I'm not. Go ahead.
If I might.
You may.
If I might. Good Southern boy. I think we can move it to the 9th if the council is willing. I think it's important to have all council members present.
Night's good.
We have to think about staff too. I mean,
Right.
Staff, if they have something too, and I don't know that all the staff has to be here on that date.
Yes.
So
Yeah, you got to remember now the Masters that weekend. Some people have to watch golf on Saturday.
well, actually, in the morning, if we do it early enough,
Yeah.
just the scrubs are playing in the morning.
Yeah. Would the council be amenable to let me check with the staff and just follow up with you
Sure.
early next week?
Sure, no
Well-
problem.
Then we can make the change on the 22nd.
So let me just say this. I appreciate everybody's willingness to look at it. All right. I'm not going to die on that hill. But if it can be moved, great. If it cannot be moved, I'll come back with comments. But I'd like to be here. It's just that I had something pre-planned with my niece that I haven't seen in 2 years. So my sister's not going to kill me over this.
Well, okay. Well, that being said, we'll see. We'll probably know next week. So,
Sure. And if that's all, then we just need a motion to adjourn.
can I get a motion to adjourn?
A motion to adjourn.
Tom has made a motion to adjourn. All in favor? Unanimous. I almost raised my hand.